The desert wind carried memory across the firing range at 29 Palms, California, where Master Sergeant Cole Mackenzie stood watching young Marines fail at skills he had mastered before most of them were born. 48 years old, with silver threading through close-cropped hair and a body that still moved with the lethal economy of a predator, Cole represented something the modern Marine Corps no longer seemed to value: experience. The morning sun climbed over the San Bernardino Mountains, painting the range in shades of gold and shadow. Heat already rising from sand and rock, the kind of heat that made sweat a constant companion and tested discipline as much as skill. Cole had spent 24 years on ranges like this, teaching, training, perfecting the craft of precision shooting until it became muscle memory and breath control, and the ability to read wind-like poetry written in dust devils and mirage shimmer. But the Marine Corps was changing, moving forward, embracing technology that made the old skills seem obsolete. Ballistic computers, laser rangefinders, drones that could spot targets from altitudes that made human observation irrelevant. The young Marines arriving at Scout Sniper School expected technology to do the thinking, expected answers to come from screens instead of experience. Cole knew better, had seen technology fail in Helmand Province when batteries died and satellites lost signal, and all that remained was a Marine with a rifle and the training to use it without electronic assistance. But explaining that to 19-year-olds who had grown up with smartphones was like teaching a foreign language to people who didn't believe other languages existed. The Lance Corporal at the 1,000-yard line missed his target by 3 feet. Wind correction all wrong, breathing timed to heartbeat instead of against it. The kind of mistake that got people killed in places where second chances didn't exist. Cole made a note on his clipboard and tried not to think about how many times he had made this same correction over the past 3 years. How many times he had watched technology-minded Marines trust their ballistic computers over their instincts. How many times he had heard the unspoken message beneath the polite words: "You're from the old wars, Sergeant. We've moved on." The young Marine approached, gear rattling with the kind of noise that would get a sniper killed in actual combat. His name tape read Garcia, and his eyes held that particular mixture of frustration and defensiveness that came from failing at something you thought would be easy. "Sir, I had the calculations right. The computer said .3 mils right for wind." Cole looked at the target, then at the wind flags dancing along the range, then back at Garcia. "The computer doesn't know this valley, doesn't know how the heat rises off these rocks in March, doesn't know that the wind here swirls before it settles. I know because I've shot this range 10,000 times over 24 years. When your battery dies at 0300 and you've got a shot to make, what are you going to trust?" Garcia said nothing, just stared at the ground the way young people did when old people told them things they didn't want to hear. Captain Rodriguez approached from the range tower, 32 years old and fast-tracked for major. He had the lean efficiency of someone who had grown up with smartphones and GPS, who had never known a military without drones and satellite surveillance. Good officer, smart. But he looked at Cole the way you looked at antique furniture. Beautiful, historic, and no longer functional for modern needs. "Sergeant Mackenzie, could I see you for a moment?" Cole followed him away from the firing line, away from the young Marines who would gossip about this conversation the moment they thought he was out of earshot. The captain's body language spoke volumes before his mouth opened. Apologetic, uncomfortable, delivering news he didn't necessarily agree with, but had to execute anyway. The new rotation schedules came down from division. You're assigned to advanced training cadre full-time. No more deployment-eligible status. Cole had been expecting this, had seen it coming since his 45th birthday when the first memo arrived suggesting he transitioned to instructor duties, but expecting pain didn't make it hurt less. "Understood, sir." Rodriguez shifted well, clearly wanting to say more. "For what it's worth, I think it's a mistake. You've got more field experience than half the staff officers combined. But the Corps is moving toward younger deployments, faster rotation cycles. They want operators who grew up with the technology, who think digital first. They want people who haven't been doing this since before the war on terror started," Cole said quietly. "People who don't remember what it was like when we didn't have satellites telling us where every enemy fighter was hiding." Rodriguez met his eyes. "Yeah, that's about the size of it." The captain walked away and Cole stood alone on the edge of the range, watching heat shimmer rise off the desert floor. 24 years of service, 3 combat deployments, 2,956 confirmed eliminations across Afghanistan and Iraq. A legend in Scout Sniper community. And now, at 48, he was officially too old for the war he had spent half his life fighting. His phone buzzed. Text from Davis Coleman, the man Cole had served with in Helmand Province back when they were both young enough to think they were immortal. Davis had retired 5 years ago, started a cybersecurity firm, and spent his considerable free time hacking into databases Cole didn't ask questions about. The message was 3 words. We got movement. Cole stepped away from the range, heart rate elevating for the first time all day. 20 years. 20 years of searching, tracking, investigating. 20 years of false leads and dead ends and nights spent staring at files that never changed. Movement meant something had shifted in the case that had consumed every moment Cole wasn't actively being a Marine. The case of his stolen son. He called Davis immediately. Talk to me. Your boy filed a Freedom of Information Act request yesterday. Wants your complete military service record from National Archives. He knows something's wrong. He's looking for you. Cole closed his eyes, let the desert sun beat down on his face, tried to process information he had dreamed about for 2 decades. Ryan. His son, Ryan, stolen 20 years ago by the man who was supposed to protect him. Ryan was searching. After all these years of Cole hunting, his son was hunting back. Where is he? Same place he's been. Fort Worth, working at Lockheed Martin on the F-35 program. Married to that psychologist we identified. Emily Torres, she's Leon's cousin, by the way. Small world. Leon Torres, another brother from Helmand days. Staff sergeant back then, DEA agent now, retired and volunteering at VA centers, teaching combat vets how to reintegrate. The 3 of them had stayed tight through 2 decades because that's what Marines did. They didn't leave brothers behind, even when the Corps told them they were too old to matter anymore. Does he know we've been watching? Negative. We've been careful. But Cole, he posted on a military forum yesterday, looking for information about you. Says the official death certificate looks fake. Says he thinks you might be his real father. He's asking anyone who served with you to contact him. Cole felt something crack open in his chest. Not anger, not even grief. Something older and deeper. Hope. I need to see what kind of man my son became before he finds out what kind of man I am. Roger that. Leon and I are wheels up tonight. We'll be in Texas tomorrow. Setting up surveillance, seeing what we're dealing with. Cole ended the call and stood very still. Watching young Marines on the firing range miss targets his son would one day learn to hit. Because Ryan was a Mackenzie, he had the blood, the genetics, the instinct. Cole had given him that much, even if Victor Sterling had stolen everything else. The memories came without permission. The way they always did when Cole let his guard down. The way memories did when you'd spent 20 years trying to forget and failing every single time. 2004 felt like yesterday and a lifetime ago simultaneously. Cole had been 28 years old, 4 years into his first marriage, and the father of a 4-year-old boy who thought his daddy could do anything. Ryan James Mackenzie, 38 pounds of perpetual motion and unconditional love. A child who cried every time Cole put on his uniform because, even at 4 years old, Ryan understood that the uniform meant daddy was leaving. The marriage to Jennifer Hayes had been doomed from the start. College sweethearts who had confused passion for compatibility. She was a dental hygienist from Austin who thought military life meant neat houses on clean bases with community barbecues and affordable health care. The reality of being married to a Marine Scout sniper, gone for months at a time, living in temporary housing, moving every 2 years, had broken her within 3 years. When Ryan was 2, she had sat Cole down in their base housing kitchen at Camp Pendleton and said the words that would reshape his entire life. I can't do this anymore. The deployments, the uncertainty, raising our son alone. I didn't sign up to be a widow while you play hero in deserts halfway around the world. She had wanted custody. Cole had fought. The divorce proceedings had been vicious and expensive and ultimately resolved when Jennifer realized she didn't actually want the burden of full-time single motherhood. She had signed away her parental rights, taken a settlement, and disappeared to Denver where she worked for her brother's dental practice. Last Cole heard, she had remarried a banker and had 2 daughters and never mentioned having a son in Texas. Ryan became Cole's universe. Everything he did, every decision he made, every risk he calculated, revolved around a little boy with dark hair and serious eyes who asked questions like, why do people fight wars and Daddy, will you always come home? When orders came down for another deployment to Afghanistan in 2004, Cole had faced the impossible choice every single parent in the military faces. Take Ryan with him between bases, shuttling a 4-year-old through temporary housing and constant relocations, or find stable care while he served. His sister Kate had seemed like the obvious answer. Catherine Ann Mackenzie Sterling, 31 years old, married to Victor Sterling, a former Marine JAG officer who had transitioned to private practice. They lived in a beautiful house in San Diego, drove expensive cars, and had been trying unsuccessfully to have children for 8 years. Kate was desperate for a child to love. Victor seemed stable, successful, reliable, a lawyer who understood military life because he had lived it. Cole remembered the conversation in Kate's kitchen. She had made coffee and Ryan had been in the backyard playing with their golden retriever, and everything had felt safe and right and normal. "I'll take good care of him, big brother. Victor and I will treat him like our own. He'll have his own room, good schools, everything he needs. You go serve. We'll be here when you get back." Victor had drawn up the papers. Temporary guardianship, he had explained, showing Cole where to sign, just legal protection in case something happens to you over there. Medical decisions, school enrollment, that kind of thing, standard stuff. I process these for military families all the time. Cole had trusted him, trusted his sister, signed documents without reading them carefully because he was exhausted from pre-deployment training and convinced himself that family wouldn't betray family. The signatures that would haunt him for 20 years took less than 5 minutes to complete. The deployment to Helmand Province was supposed to be 12 months. Cole shipped out with his team. Davis Coleman, call sign Wraith because he moved through terrain like smoke. Leon Torres, call sign Falcon for his ability to spot targets from impossible distances. And their team leader, Staff Sergeant Samuel Cross, 42 years old, called Prophet because he had an uncanny ability to predict enemy movement and an even more unsettling tendency to speak in philosophical riddles that usually turned out to be tactically correct. Prophet was the old man of the unit. Everyone else was in their 20s or early 30s. He was the one who had served in earlier conflicts, who had seen combat before 9/11, who remembered when Marine Scout snipers operated without satellite support and drone surveillance. He was exactly what Cole would become 20 years later, a relic, a legend, an old warrior teaching young killers the difference between shooting and thinking. Their forward operating base in Helmand was a collection of plywood buildings surrounded by HESCO barriers and concertina wire. Dust everywhere, heat that made you stupid if you didn't hydrate constantly, and an enemy that knew the terrain better than any satellite could map it. The FOB housed 200 Marines rotating through missions that ranged from convoy security to direct action raids. But Cole's sniper team operated differently, smaller, more independent. They spent days or weeks away from the wire, living in hide sites, observing enemy movement, waiting for targets that sometimes never appeared. Prophet was the team leader. Staff Sergeant Samuel Cross, 42 years old. Everyone else on the team was in their 20s or early 30s. Prophet was the old man, the veteran of earlier conflicts whose names were still classified. The Marine who had earned his Scout Sniper badge when the program was harder and the standards were higher, and failure meant you went back to infantry whether you liked it or not. He moved like a man who had forgotten how to be anything except a sniper. Economical, deliberate, every action calculated to conserve energy and avoid detection. He could lie motionless for 16 hours watching an enemy compound, could control his bladder and breathing and even his heartbeat, could become part of the terrain so completely that Taliban fighters walked within meters of his position without seeing him. But Prophet's real skill wasn't physical. It was psychological. He understood that being a sniper meant more than making difficult shots. It meant understanding the second and third order effects of every trigger pull. It meant calculating whether killing one man would save 10 lives or create 20 new enemies. It meant having the discipline to not shoot when every instinct and training said you should. Cole's team ran reconnaissance missions, overwatch for infantry patrols, counter-sniper operations. They spent days lying motionless in ghillie suits, controlling bladders and breathing, waiting for targets that sometimes never appeared. It was boring and terrifying in equal measure. Hours of nothing punctuated by seconds of violence so intense it rewrote your nervous system. Prophet taught them patience. Anyone can shoot a target, he would say, cleaning his rifle with the kind of reverence other men reserve for religious objects. Warrior knows when to shoot and when to wait, when to kill and when to spare. That's what separates us from murderers. We choose. The weapon in Prophet's hands was an M40A3, older model. He'd used the same rifle for 8 years, refused to upgrade to newer systems, said the rifle knew him and he knew the rifle, and that relationship mattered more than improved optics or better stocks. Said technology was a tool, but the warrior made the weapon effective, not the other way around. The mission that would define Cole's entire philosophy of combat came in month 3 of deployment. They had been tasked with eliminating a Taliban commander who had been coordinating attacks on supply convoys. High-value target, confirmed responsible for 17 American deaths. The kind of mission where success meant body count and nobody asked questions. They set up in an abandoned compound 300 meters from the target house. Cole had the shot. Perfect line of sight through a window. The commander sitting at a table, clearly visible, well within effective range. Wind negligible. Humidity accounted for. Every variable calculated. Cole's finger moved to the trigger. Controlled breathing. Heartbeat slowing. The zone where time compressed and expanded simultaneously. Where a sniper existed between decision and execution. Then the commander's son walked into the room. Maybe 5 years old, same age as Ryan. The boy climbed into his father's lap, started showing him something. A toy maybe, or a drawing. The commander smiled, put his arm around the child. Cole had the shot, could take it. The boy would be traumatized but alive. Mission accomplished. Prophet's voice came in through the radio, barely a whisper. Your call, Reaper. Cole's call sign, Reaper, for the grim efficiency with which he collected bodies. 340 confirmed kills across 3 deployments. A legend in the making. And in that moment, staring through a scope at a father holding his son, Cole realized that legends were just stories people told about choices they didn't understand. Negative, Cole whispered back. Too much collateral. We extract. They withdrew. Mission failed by conventional metrics. But 2 weeks later, intel came through that the same commander had defected to Afghan government, providing information that prevented an attack on Bagram Air Base. Information that saved an estimated 50 American lives. Prophet found Cole that night in the plywood building they called home. Sat down on the adjacent cot without saying anything for a long time. Finally spoke. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Remember that, Reaper. When you're old like me, when you've seen enough bodies to fill stadiums, you'll realize that warrior's real skill isn't killing. It's knowing when not to kill. That's what separates us from monsters. Cole thought about Ryan, wondered if his son would remember him when he got home. 4-year-olds had short memories. Would Ryan recognize his face? Would he remember the songs Cole sang him to sleep? Would he understand why Daddy had to leave? The phone calls home were irregular and frustrating. Satellite connections at the FOB were unreliable at best. Cole called every week, sometimes more, whenever bandwidth allowed. The first 6 months, everything seemed fine. Kate would put Ryan on the video call, and Cole would watch his son grow through pixelated images on a laptop screen in a plywood hut 8,000 miles from everything that mattered. Ryan would press his hands against the screen and babble about preschool and his new friends and how much he loved Aunt Katie. Cole would read him stories through the connection, watch Ryan's eyes get heavy, feel his heart break knowing he was missing bedtime. Month 7, things started to change. Subtle at first, Kate mentioning paperwork issues. School enrollment needed updated guardianship documents. Medical insurance required additional signatures. Cole was running missions, exhausted, operating on 4 hours of sleep and whatever passed for coffee at the FOB. He signed digital documents Kate emailed him without reading them carefully. Trusted his sister, trusted family. Month 8, he called for his weekly check-in and Ryan wasn't available. Sleeping, Kate said. Had a long day at preschool. Call back tomorrow. Tomorrow, Ryan was at a friend's house. First sleepover. So excited you should have seen him. Week 3 of month 8, Ryan was visiting cousins in Los Angeles. Week 4, doctor's appointment ran late. He's napping now, don't want to wake him. Cole's instincts started screaming. The same instincts that kept him alive in Helmand, that told him when something felt wrong, even when nothing looked wrong, started sending alerts his conscious mind didn't want to acknowledge. But he was deployed 8,000 miles away, running missions. Couldn't just leave because his sister was being weird about phone calls. He asked Prophet about it. The old man listened with the kind of patience that came from having heard every possible variation of every possible problem over 20 years of service. Trust your gut, Prophet said. Gut kept you alive this long for a reason. Something feels wrong, usually is wrong, but you're stuck here for 4 more months. Can't fix what you can't reach. Make a plan, execute when your wheels down stateside. Cole started making calls to Kate's neighbors in San Diego, to Ryan's preschool, to friends of the family. The first real alarm came when a neighbor said, "Oh, they moved to Texas about 2 months ago. Didn't Kate tell you?" Panic. Real, genuine ice in the bloodstream. Panic. Cole called Kate's cell. Voicemail, called Victor's law office. Secretary said Mr. Sterling no longer works here. Left for our Dallas branch 6 months ago. 6 months. While Cole was deployed, while he was unreachable. They had moved across the country with his son and hadn't told him. Cole went to his commanding officer, explained the situation, requested emergency communication access. The Corps did what the Corps could, but civilian family matters were exactly that. Civilian. They could facilitate calls, but couldn't force anyone to answer. 2 weeks later, a Red Cross message came through, the kind of message that meant someone died. Kate's friend from San Diego, forwarding information she thought Cole should know. Kate had been killed in a car accident in Dallas 3 months ago. Single vehicle collision. Vehicle ran off the road, struck a tree. Police ruled it driver error. 3 months ago, while Cole was in Helmand, and nobody had told him. Not Victor, not family friends, nobody. Emergency leave was granted immediately. Cole was on a transport within 24 hours, flying from Helmand to Bagram to Germany to Texas, running on adrenaline and horror, and the growing certainty that everything had gone catastrophically wrong. He landed in San Antonio, rented a car, drove to the San Diego house only to find it sold. New family living there, no forwarding address, drove to Dallas following the accident report address. House was empty, for sale sign in the yard. Neighbors said the family who lived there left months ago, man and a little boy, no idea where they went. Cole stood in front of that empty house in Dallas and felt reality crack. His sister was dead. His son was gone. And the man who was supposed to protect both of them had disappeared with Ryan. He hired lawyers. Military legal assistants helped him file motions. Private investigators started searching. And that's when Cole discovered what Victor Sterling had actually done. The guardianship papers Cole had signed weren't temporary. They were permanent adoption documents, complete with forged psychological evaluations declaring Cole Mackenzie mentally unstable, suffering from severe combat-related PTSD, prone to violent outbursts, and fundamentally unfit for parenthood. The documents cited specific incidents that never happened, quoted therapists Cole had never seen, referenced hospitalizations that didn't exist. Every signature was expertly forged, every document perfectly crafted. Victor Sterling, former Marine JAG officer, had used his legal expertise and military connections to fabricate a complete psychological profile that painted Cole as a dangerous, damaged combat veteran who posed a threat to his own child. And the courts had believed it, because why wouldn't they? Victor was a respected lawyer. The documents looked official. And Cole was deployed in Afghanistan, unable to attend hearings, unable to defend himself, unable to do anything except watch his life collapse via satellite connection. The adoption had been finalized while Cole was on a mission tracking Taliban fighters through mountain caves. Ryan's last name had been legally changed to Sterling. His first name had been changed to something else, Cole would later discover. The child's entire identity had been erased and rebuilt, and it was all perfectly legal because Cole had signed the initial paperwork. The Marine Corps legal team tried to help, but their hands were tied. The adoption was processed through civilian courts. Documents were in order, nothing they could do without evidence of fraud, and Victor had covered his tracks expertly. Cole spent every dollar he had, hired private investigators, forensic document specialists, lawyers who specialized in contested adoptions. The investigation revealed that Victor had planned this from the beginning. The temporary guardianship papers were never temporary. The whole setup had been designed to steal Ryan legally. And Kate, sweet, desperate Kate, who just wanted a child to love. The accident report bothered Cole. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses. Car ran off-road at high speed. But Kate was a careful driver, never had accidents. and Victor had her car serviced 2 days before she died. The private investigator Cole hired looked at the police report and said what Cole was thinking but couldn't prove. This could have been murder. Brake lines, acceleration cable, any number of ways to make an accident look accidental. But without the original vehicle, which was scrapped months ago, no way to prove it. Cole confronted the possibility that Victor Sterling hadn't just stolen his son. Victor had murdered Kate to silence her. Maybe she had discovered what Victor was doing. Maybe she tried to stop it. Maybe she threatened to tell Cole. And maybe Victor decided the easiest solution was to eliminate the witness and take Ryan anyway. Cole took early retirement from the Marine Corps, medical discharge, legitimate PTSD, but not from combat, from losing his son, from discovering that the system designed to protect children had been weaponized against him, from realizing that while he was protecting his country, someone had destroyed his family. Davis and Leon rallied. Brothers didn't abandon brothers. Prophets, still on active duty, coordinated from within the Corps. They formed an unofficial task force with one mission: find Ryan Mackenzie, bring him home. 20 years later, Cole stood on a firing range at 29 Palms, watching young Marines learn skills that hadn't saved the thing that mattered most. Technology couldn't find his son. Satellites couldn't track Victor Sterling through multiple name changes and manufactured identities. Ballistic computers couldn't calculate the trajectory of a stolen life. But old-school investigation could. Patient, methodical, relentless investigation driven by love and rage in equal measure. Davis's cybersecurity skills. Leon's law enforcement connections. Prophet's military network before cancer took him 3 years ago. And Cole's absolute refusal to stop searching. They had found Ryan 3 months ago. Facial recognition hit from a Lockheed Martin employee database. Ryan Harper, 24 years old, aerospace engineer, Fort Worth, Texas. Cross-reference with property records, social media, public databases. High confidence match. Cole had spent 3 months watching his son from a distance, learning his patterns, seeing what kind of man Ryan had become, and trying to decide whether to make contact or keep hunting the man who had stolen everything. Now Ryan was hunting back, filing FOIA requests, posting on military forums, searching for the father he thought was dead. Cole's phone buzzed again. Email notification from a Reddit account named Stolen Valor 2000. Cole clicked it open, read the message that would change everything. Looking for information about Master Sergeant Cole Mackenzie, Marine Scout Sniper, deployed 2004 to 2005, Helmand Province. Official records say KIA, but death certificate looks fake. Was he my father? Was he the hero they said, or the monster? Anyone who served with him, please contact me. Cole read it 3 times. The monster. Ryan didn't know if his biological father was a hero or a monster because Victor Sterling had spent 20 years planting seeds of doubt, making Ryan question whether Cole abandoned him or was too dangerous to parent him. The phone rang. Davis calling back. You see the Reddit post? I saw it. So what's the play? We've been watching him for 3 months. Watching you watch him. You want to make contact or you want to wait? Cole thought about profit, about lessons learned in Helmand Province, about knowing when to shoot and when to wait, about understanding that some targets weren't worth hitting and some battles required patience most men didn't have. I need to see what kind of man my son became before he sees what kind of man I am. Get to Texas. Set up proper surveillance. I want to know everything, his routines, his friends, his wife, what he does on weekends, where he goes when he's not at work. Everything. I need to know if he's worth the truth. And if he's not, then I keep hunting Victor Sterling until I find him. 20 years is a long time to plan perfect revenge. Davis was quiet for a moment. You know what Prophet would say about that? Cole smiled, bitter and cold. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Yeah, I remember. But Prophet's dead, and my son is alive and searching for me, and the man who stole him is still breathing. Priorities change. Roger that. We're wheels up at 2200. See you in Texas, brother. Cole ended the call and walked back to the firing range where young Marines were learning to kill at distances that made killing abstract. Point-and-click warfare. Drone strikes and precision-guided munitions. War fought from air-conditioned rooms 8,000 miles from consequences. Captain Rodriguez approached again, clearly having worked up the courage to say something he had been holding back. Sergeant Mackenzie, I know the reassignment to permanent instructor status feels like a demotion. But for what it's worth, You've trained half the scout snipers currently deployed. Your legacy isn't in the field anymore. It's in the Marines you've taught. That matters. Cole looked at the young captain and wondered if he would understand what it felt like to become obsolete while you were still breathing. To be told that your experience was less valuable than someone else's youth. To watch everything you built get handed to people who thought history started when they joined. Respectfully, sir, legacy doesn't mean much when you're being told you're too old to matter. You're not too old to matter. You're too valuable to risk. There's a difference. Cole wanted to believe that, wanted to think that being sidelined was a compliment instead of an insult. But he had spent 20 years searching for his son while the Marine Corps told him to focus on his career. 20 years putting mission first because that's what good Marines did. And now the Corps was telling him he was too old for missions. The irony was almost funny. For 20 years, Cole had been the perfect Marine, focused, dedicated, lethal, choosing duty over family because he had no family left to choose. And now that his son was within reach, now that the hunt was ending, the Corps had decided he was past his prime. He watched Garcia make another shot, closer this time, still not perfect but improving. Learning that computers were tools, not answers. That experience mattered. That the old ways worked because they were built on understanding, not technology. Cole made another note on his clipboard and thought about his own son learning to shoot at ranges Cole would never supervise. Growing up with a man who had stolen him, who had murdered to keep him, who had built an entire false identity to prevent Cole from ever finding him. 20 years Victor Sterling had stayed hidden. 20 years of manufactured lives and fake names and carefully constructed lies. But he had made one mistake. He had raised Ryan to be curious, to ask questions, to search for truth. And now that curiosity was bringing Ryan back to Cole, bringing the hunt full circle, bringing father and son toward a collision that had been 20 years in the making. Cole's phone buzzed one more time. Text from Leon Torres. Just booked flights. Me and Davis touch down DFW tomorrow at 0900. Setting up surveillance apartment. You coming? Cole looked at the firing range, at the young Marines who would forget him in 5 years, at the career that was ending, whether he wanted it to or not, at the legacy Captain Rodriguez thought mattered more than the son Cole had lost. He typed back one word, coming. Then he walked off the range, climbed into his truck, and started the long drive from 29 Palms, California to Fort Worth, Texas, to find his son, to confront the man who had stolen him, to finish the hunt that had consumed 20 years and cost him everything. The desert sun set behind him as he drove east, toward Texas, toward truth, toward the hardest decision of his life. Because when Cole found Ryan, when he looked his son in the eyes for the first time in 20 years, he would have to choose. Tell the truth and risk destroying the young man's world, or stay silent and let Victor Sterling win. Prophet's voice echoed in his memory. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. But Prophet had never lost a son, never spent 20 years hunting a ghost, never had to choose between revenge and redemption. Cole drove through the night, hands steady on the wheel, mind racing through scenarios and outcomes and possibilities. Davis and Leon would set up surveillance. They would watch Ryan together, learn who he had become, see if the boy Cole remembered had grown into a man worth knowing. And then Cole would decide whether to pull the trigger on truth or let his son keep living a lie. Either way, the hunt was ending. After 20 years, Cole Mackenzie was going home. Not to California, not to the Marine Corps, but to Texas, where his son was searching for a father who had never stopped searching for him. The road stretched empty and dark ahead. Cole drove fast, pushing the speed limit, making up for 20 years of distance in 800 miles of asphalt and determination. Behind him, 29 Palms disappeared in the rearview mirror. The firing range, the young Marines, the career that had defined him for 24 years, all of it fading into memory. Ahead of him, Texas waited. Ryan waited. Truth waited. And somewhere in Dallas, Victor Sterling had no idea that the Reaper was coming, that the sniper he had evaded for 20 years had finally lined up the perfect shot. Cole's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Prophet's words echoed again. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. But this time, Cole wasn't sure if he had the strength to spare his target. This time, the target had stolen the only thing that mattered, and 20 years of patience were finally running out. Texas grew closer with every mile. The hunt was ending, and when it did, someone was going to pay for 20 years of stolen time. Cole drove through the darkness, toward dawn, toward his son, toward the reckoning that had been 2 decades in the making. The old Marine, the obsolete warrior, the father who had never stopped searching. Coming home at last, the surveillance apartment Davis Coleman rented sat on the fourth floor of a converted warehouse in Fort Worth's west side, 3 blocks from where Ryan Harper lived with his wife in a modest 2-story house with a detached garage and a yard that needed mowing. Cole stood at the window in the pre-dawn darkness, binoculars trained on the house where his son slept, and tried to remember how to breathe like a man instead of a predator. Davis worked 3 laptops simultaneously at a folding table they had converted into a command center. Facial recognition software running constantly. Traffic cameras hacked and monitored. Cell phone tower data being analyzed in real time. The kind of surveillance that was technically illegal but morally necessary when you were hunting a man who had stolen your child and murdered your sister to cover his tracks. Leon Torres sat in the corner cleaning a rifle he wouldn't use but kept ready anyway, because Marines didn't operate without backup plans. At 50 years old, Leon looked like he had been carved from mahogany and violence. Retired DEA. 5 tours between Iraq and Afghanistan. A man who understood that some targets required patience and others required immediate action. The 3 of them had been in position for 6 hours, watching, waiting, learning patterns, preparing for contact they weren't sure would ever happen. "Cole," Davis said quietly, "you need to sleep. Been watching you watch that house for 6 hours straight. When's the last time you actually rested?" Sleep was for people who hadn't spent 20 years hunting. Cole kept the binoculars steady, watching the dark windows of Ryan's house, waiting for lights to come on, waiting for his first glimpse of the sun who didn't know he was being watched. The sun rose slowly over Texas, turning the sky the color of old blood. At exactly 5:30 in the morning, a light clicked on in the upstairs bedroom. 2 minutes later, the front door opened and Ryan Harper stepped out onto his porch in running shoes and athletic gear. Cole's breath stopped. 20 years. 20 years of searching and imagining and wondering what his son looked like as a man instead of a 4-year-old boy. And there he was, 6'1", lean and athletic, dark hair cut military short even though he had never served, moving with the kind of unconscious grace that spoke to genetics and training both. He looked exactly like Cole had at 24. Same jawline, same way of scanning his surroundings before committing to movement. Same predatory economy of motion that marked men who had learned to move through the world as if it might attack at any moment. Ryan stretched on the porch, then set off running east toward the Trinity River Trail system. Fast pace, controlled breathing visible even from 3 blocks away. A man who ran like he was training for something specific, not just exercising. Davis appeared beside Cole with a tablet, already tracked his morning run pattern. Same route every day, 6 miles, sub 7-minute pace. Gets back at 06:15, showers, leaves for Lockheed by 0700. Punctual, disciplined, everything you'd expect from someone with your genetics. Cole lowered the binoculars and felt something crack open in his chest. Pride mixed with grief, mixed with rage that he had missed watching that little boy become this man. 20 years of birthdays and graduations and first dates and everything that mattered. Gone. Stolen. Erased by a man who thought he deserved Cole's son more than Cole did. What about the wife? Emily Torres, 27, clinical psychologist at the VA hospital. Specializes in combat trauma and family reintegration. She's Leon's 3rd cousin, turns out. Small world. Leon looked up from cleaning his rifle. Didn't know I had family in Fort Worth until Davis ran her background. Haven't reached out. Don't want to spook them before we know what we're dealing with. Cole turned from the window and studied the tactical map Davis had printed and pinned to the wall. Ryan's house marked in red. Victor Sterling's last known address in Dallas marked in black. The VA hospital where Emily worked marked in blue. Shooting ranges Ryan frequented marked in green. Everything plotted and analyzed like a military operation because that's what this was. A 20-year campaign finally reaching its conclusion. What else do we know about Ryan's patterns? Davis pulled up files on the laptop. Hits the range twice a week, Texas gun experience on Thursdays, Elm Fork shooting sports on Saturdays. Shoots pistol and rifle both. Natural talent. Instructors there say he's one of the best non-professional shooters they've seen. Asked him multiple times if he's prior military. He always says no, but he's training like he plans to enlist. Cole felt that crack in his chest widen. His son had the instinct, the genetics, the drive. Everything that made a Marine Scout sniper, except the training and opportunity. And Victor Sterling had spent 20 years trying to suppress it, trying to make Ryan into a lawyer or an engineer or anything except what he was born to be. What about the VA meetings? That's interesting. Leon stood and walked to the tactical map. He attends a weekly support group for families of combat veterans. Not for vets themselves, but for spouses, children, siblings, people trying to understand loved ones who came back different from war. He's not a veteran's family member, Cole said. Victor told him I was dead. Leon nodded slowly, which means he's there for another reason. Either he suspects Victor lied and he's trying to understand what his real father might have experienced, or he's researching something else entirely. Or, Davis added, pulling up another file, he's there because his wife works at the VA and he's supporting her work. Emily Torres runs that specific group. Could be he's just being a good husband. Cole studied Ryan's photo on the laptop screen, tried to see past genetics and into character. What kind of man had his son become? Was he searching for truth, or was he content with Victor's lies? Did he question the official story, or did he accept that his biological father had been a dangerous combat veteran who abandoned him? The morning surveillance continued. Ryan returned from his run at exactly 6:15. Showered, left for work at 700. Emily departed 10 minutes later, heading toward the VA hospital. The house sat empty, and Cole resisted the urge to walk 3 blocks and stand in the yard where his son lived without knowing his father was watching. They got confirmation that Ryan filed the FOIA request, Davis said around noon, scrolling through intercepted emails. National Archives responded, said they'll process it within 30 days. He's going to get your complete service record. Everything. Deployments, commendations, the works. When he sees that file, he's going to know the death certificate was fake. Good. Let him know. Let him see what his father actually was instead of what Victor claimed. Leon leaned back in his chair. You thought about what happens when he finds out you've been alive this whole time? 20 years and you never made contact? That's going to be hard to explain. Cole had thought about little else for 3 months. How do you tell your son that you spent 20 years searching but never approached once you found him? How do you explain watching from a distance, learning his patterns, seeing his life, and choosing to remain a ghost? I needed to know what kind of man he became before I told him what kind of man I am. And now that you know, Cole looked at the house 3 blocks away. Now I need to know if he can handle the truth, if he's strong enough for what comes next. What comes next is you meeting your son, Leon said quietly. Everything else is just tactics. But tactics mattered. Cole had learned that in Helmand Province watching Prophet plan missions. The difference between success and failure wasn't courage or skill. It was preparation and timing and understanding that sometimes the best attack was patience. Davis's laptop chimed again. Different alert this time. Cole, you need to see this. The screen showed Reddit, the military forum where Ryan had posted asking about Cole. New comment thread, someone claiming to have served with Cole in Helmand Province. Served with the Reaper Mackenzie in 0405. Best shot I ever saw. Hard man but fair. Took early retirement, sudden like family emergency. Haven't heard from him since. If you're his son, you should know your dad was a hero. Whatever happened after, the man who deployed to Helmand Province was a good Marine. The username was GhostOp48, Davis Coleman's personal account. You posted that, Cole said. Someone had to. Kids looking for answers about his father. Deserves to know the truth from someone who was there. Cole read the comment again. Felt the weight of Davis's loyalty across 20 years. This was what brotherhood meant. Marines who had your back even when you were wrong, who told your son you were a hero when you felt like a failure. Another comment appeared under Davis's. Different user, Falcon I-50. Mackenzie was our team leader's right hand. Prophet Cross trusted him absolutely. That's the highest recommendation any Marine can get. Your father was the kind of warrior who knew when to shoot and when to spare. Remember that. Leon had posted too. Both of them creating a narrative of who Cole had been before Victor Sterling destroyed everything. Giving Ryan breadcrumbs to follow, building a trail that led back to the truth. More comments appeared over the next hour. Some from real veterans who remembered Cole, some from people who had heard stories. All painting picture of a Marine who served with honor, who made impossible shots, who brought his team home when others would have failed. One comment stood out. From a user named Prophet42, posted 6 years ago in a different thread, but now linked by someone to Ryan's question. The measure of a sniper isn't confirmed kills. It's knowing when not to take the shot. Hardest thing I ever taught my team was that warrior chooses when to spare a target because sometimes letting someone live serves the mission better than killing them. Cole Mackenzie understood that better than most. If he's still alive, tell him Prophet says he made the right choice. Cole stared at that comment. Prophet had posted it 2 years before cancer killed him. Had left breadcrumbs even then for a reunion he wouldn't live to see. The afternoon bled into evening. Ryan and Emily stayed home. Normal couple doing normal things. But Ryan spent 2 hours on his laptop. Based on keystroke analysis Davis was running, he was reading every comment on that Reddit thread, learning about his father from men who had served with him, building psychological profile from fragments and memories and secondhand stories. The screen filled with pharmaceutical data. Cole read the medication names and felt ice spread through his veins. Oxycodone, anti-nausea medication, the kind of prescription cocktail that came with terminal illness. Victor's dying, Davis said, running the medications through a medical database. Based on this combination, probably cancer. Pancreatic or liver, advanced stage, 6 months maybe, could be less. Leon stood and walked to the window. So the man who stole your son and probably murdered your sister is going to die before you can make him answer for any of it. That's convenient for him. Cole stared at the medication list and tried to process what this meant. 20 years he had imagined confronting Victor Sterling. 20 years of planning what he would say, what he would do, how he would make the man suffer for every stolen moment. And cancer was going to rob him of that confrontation. Unless he acted fast. Find out where Victor's getting treatment, Cole said. Hospital, oncologist, everything. I want to know his pattern same as Ryan's. How often he goes in, what his prognosis is, how much time we're working with. Davis was already typing. On it, should have something within the hour. The surveillance continued through the afternoon. Ryan returned from Lockheed Martin at 17:30, same as always. Emily arrived 15 minutes later. They ate dinner on their back patio, and Cole watched through binoculars as his son grilled chicken and his daughter-in-law set the table, and they moved around each other with the comfortable intimacy of people who had built a life together. It was the kind of scene Cole had imagined for himself and Jennifer back before the marriage collapsed. The kind of domestic peace warriors dreamed about in forward operating bases 8,000 miles from anything that felt like home. And Victor Sterling had given this to Ryan. A normal life, a good wife, stability and safety, and everything Cole couldn't provide while deployed. The thought made him sick, because part of him, the part that had learned from Prophet about when not to shoot, wondered if Ryan was actually better off without knowing the truth. If maybe the kindest thing Cole could do was walk away and let his son keep living the life Victor had built for him. The memories came without permission. 20 years of searching compressed into fragments that played behind Cole's eyes like a documentary of failure and persistence in equal measure. 2006, Brazil. Cole was working private security for a mining company, pulling down $200,000 for 6 months of babysitting executives who thought cartels were movie villains instead of legitimate threats to their quarterly earnings. Every dollar went to private investigators in Texas. Every lead turned cold. Victor Sterling had vanished as completely as if he'd never existed. 2009, Ukraine, asset recovery mission tracking, stolen antiquities through Eastern European black markets. Cole found a Fabergé egg that had been missing since World War II, but couldn't find his own son. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was good at finding things, just not the thing that mattered most. 2012. Afghanistan again, this time as a contractor training Afghan National Police snipers. Back in Helmand Province, where he'd learned from Prophet, where he'd made the choice not to shoot the Taliban commander with his son in his lap. The province felt different as a contractor. Mercenary work, no flag to serve, just money and muscle memory and the knowledge that Ryan was 12 years old somewhere in America growing up without knowing his real father existed. He had broken down in a plywood hut that smelled like sweat and gun oil, surrounded by men who spoke Pashto and looked at him like he was already a ghost. Davis had flown out on his own dime, spent 3 days in Afghanistan just sitting with Cole, not talking, not offering platitudes, just being present because that's what brothers did. You can't keep doing this, Davis had said finally. Can't keep taking contracts in war zones hoping you'll die honorably instead of living with the pain. That's not warrior behavior. That's suicide with extra steps. I don't know how to stop, Cole had admitted. don't know how to be anything except the man searching for his son. Then we find him together. Or we accept that he's gone, but we don't die in foreign countries running from grief. 2015. The false lead in Oregon that nearly destroyed Cole completely. A private investigator called saying he had spotted Ryan Sterling, age 15, at a high school in Portland. Cole flew out immediately, rented a car, sat outside the school for 3 days watching a kid who had the right age and general description, but wrong everything else. When he finally accepted it wasn't Ryan, Cole drove to the Oregon coast and sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean with his service pistol in his lap. 22 rounds. One would be enough. Quick, clean, ending 20 years of failure in a moment of tactical efficiency. Leon found him there 6 hours later. Somehow knew, somehow understood, drove 10 hours from California without being asked because brotherhood meant reading silence better than words. Leon sat beside him on the cliff, didn't mention the pistol, didn't ask stupid questions, just sat watching the ocean destroy itself against rocks over and over and over. Patient, relentless, like searching for a stolen son. Prophet's funeral was 2018. Cancer had taken him quick and mean. 3 months from diagnosis to death. Cole sat in the chapel at Arlington National Cemetery surrounded by Marines who had served with Prophet across 3 decades and felt like a fraud. These men had honored their mentor by living well. Cole had honored his by becoming obsessed. Prophet's widow found Cole after the service. Small woman, strong, the kind of strength that came from raising kids alone while a husband deployed repeatedly. He talked about you, she said. Toward the end, said you were fighting the wrong war. Said the hardest battle you'd face wouldn't be against the man who took your son, but against your own need for revenge. Did he say what I should do? She smiled, sad, knowing, said you'd figure it out when the time came. Said you were smarter than you acted. Said the Marine Corps had trained you to kill, but life would teach you when not to. 2021, COVID lockdowns. The world shut down and Cole was trapped in his apartment in 29 Palms with no missions, no contracts, no distractions from the reality that Ryan was 21 years old and Cole had missed everything. First words, first day of school, first heartbreak, first everything. He had considered suicide seriously that year. Planned it. Selected method, written letters to Davis and Leon explaining that 20 years was enough, that some searches didn't end in reunion, that some fathers failed their sons so completely that death was the only honest response. Marcus staged an intervention, flew to California, kicked down Cole's apartment door, found him sitting in the dark with a bottle of whiskey and a loaded pistol and 20 years of photographs spread across the floor like evidence of a crime. You find that boy or you let him go, Leon had said, voice hard and uncompromising. But you don't die in this apartment alone like some civilian who never learned what Semper Fidelis means. Always faithful to the core, to your brothers, to the mission. You don't get to quit just because it's hard. 2023. The breakthrough. Davis's facial recognition. AI flagging Dylan Harper in a Lockheed Martin employee database. 24 years old. Aerospace engineer. Fort Worth, Texas. Cross-referenced with property records, social media, credit history, high confidence match. Cole had stared at the computer screen showing his son's face for the first time in 19 years. Adult, handsome, alive, looking exactly like Cole had at that age. Genetic mirror across 2 decades. That's him, Davis had confirmed. 99.8% facial structure match. Dental records we pulled from his childhood match adult dental work. DNA we got from his trash matches yours. That's Ryan. We found him. And Cole had felt nothing. No joy, no relief. Just the cold tactical assessment of a sniper who had learned that finding the target was only the first step. Understanding the target took longer. So they had watched. 3 months of surveillance, learning patterns, seeing who Ryan had become, waiting for the right moment to make contact or deciding to walk away entirely. Davis's laptop chimed again. Different alert this time. Cole, you need to see this. The screen showed Reddit, the military forum where Ryan had posted asking about Cole. New comment thread. Someone claiming to have served with Cole in Helmand Province. Served with Reaper Mackenzie in 0405. Best shot I ever saw. Hard man but fair. Took early retirement, sudden like family emergency. Haven't heard from him since. If you're his son, you should know your dad was a hero. Whatever happened after, the man who deployed to Helmand Province was a good Marine. The username was GhostOp48, Davis Coleman's personal account. You posted that, Cole said. Someone had to. Kids looking for answers about his father. Deserves to know the truth from someone who was there. Cole read the comment again. Felt the weight of Davis's loyalty across 20 years. This was what brotherhood meant. Marines who had your back even when you were wrong, who told your son you were a hero when you felt like a failure. Another comment appeared under Davis's. Different user, Falcon I-50. Mackenzie was our team leader's right hand. Prophet Cross trusted him absolutely. That's the highest recommendation any Marine can get. Your father was the kind of warrior who knew when to shoot and when to spare. Remember that. Leon had posted too, both of them creating a narrative of who Cole had been before Victor Sterling destroyed everything, giving Ryan breadcrumbs to follow, building a trail that led back to the truth. The afternoon bled into evening. Ryan and Emily stayed home. Lights on in the living room suggested television or reading. Normal couple doing normal things. At 2100 hours, the house went dark. Bedtime. Cole's phone buzzed, and email notification. Sender was a Gmail account he didn't recognize. Subject line was simple, we need to talk. He opened it. Master Sergeant Mackenzie, I know you're in Fort Worth. I know you've been watching. I found your surveillance photos in an office building across the street from my house 3 weeks ago. Sloppy fieldcraft for a legendary sniper. We need to talk. Not about justifications or apologies, about Ryan. He's planning to confront me. He's going to demand answers. I can give him facts, but facts won't heal him. Only you can do that. I'm dying. 6 months, probably less. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But your son deserves truth, and he deserves it from you, not from me. Meet me. Wednesday, 1400 hours. White Rock Lake in Dallas, East parking lot. Come alone. I'll do the same. I know you could kill me anytime. I'm offering you that chance face to face, but I'm also offering you a chance to save your son from the same mistakes we both made. Respectfully, Victor Sterling, former captain, USMC. Cole read the email 3 times. Davis and Leon read over his shoulder. The silence in the surveillance apartment stretched like a wire pulled to breaking. It's a trap, Leon said finally. Has to be. He knows you found him. He's dying anyway, so he's got nothing to lose. Could be planning to take you with him. Or, Davis countered, he's actually dying and he wants to clear his conscience. Some men get religion at the end. Want to make peace before they face whatever comes next. Cole stared at the email, at the words former Captain USMC, Victor Sterling had served, had worn the uniform, had taken the same oath Cole had, and then he had betrayed everything that uniform meant, had stolen a brother's child, had probably murdered a Marine sister, had spent 20 years hiding behind legal manipulations and manufactured identities. And now he wanted to talk. Prophet's voice echoed from memory. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. When you're facing your enemy, when you have perfect justification for pulling the trigger, that's when warrior shows his true character. Not in the killing, in the choice not to kill. I'm going, Cole said. The hell you are, Leon stood. Not alone, this could be a setup. Could be he's got lawyers ready to slap you with restraining orders. Could be he's got private security waiting to put you down if you make a move. Then you two set up Overwatch, 400 meters out, scoped rifles. If this goes sideways, you extract me. But I'm meeting him face to face. Davis was already pulling up maps of White Rock Lake on his laptop. East parking lot is here. Open sight lines from this ridge. We can set up here and here, overlapping fields of fire. Nothing happens to you without us seeing it. Why are you doing this, Leon asked. 20 years you've wanted to kill this man. Now he's offering himself up, and you're walking into what could be a trap. Why? Because, Cole said, still staring at the email, he's right about one thing. Ryan deserves truth, and I need to know why Victor did this before I decide what happens next. The decision was made. Wednesday at 1400 hours. White Rock Lake. 20 years of hunting ending in a parking lot beside a lake where families brought children to feed ducks, and couples walked hand in hand through parks designed for peace. That night, Cole didn't sleep. Stood at the window watching Ryan's house, thinking about the 4-year-old boy who used to run into his arms yelling, "Daddy, you're home." Thinking about the man that boy had become without Cole there to guide him. Thinking about Victor Sterling dying of cancer and whether that was justice or just biology. At 5:30 Wednesday morning, Ryan emerged for his daily run. Cole watched through binoculars as his son stretched and then disappeared down the street toward the river trail. 6 miles at sub-7-minute pace. The discipline of a man who trained like he had a mission, even without knowing what that mission was. Emily left for work at 0700. The house sat empty. Cole could walk 3 blocks, could break in, could search for evidence of Victor's crimes, could plant surveillance devices, could do any number of things that training and experience had taught him. Instead, he stood at the window and waited for Wednesday afternoon, for the confrontation that had been 20 years in the making, for the moment when he would look into the eyes of the man who had destroyed his family and decide whether revenge was worth the cost. Davis and Leon prepared equipment, rifles cleaned and checked, ammunition counted, escape routes planned, communications tested. They moved with the efficiency of men who had done this hundreds of times in places where mistakes meant death. The muscle memory of brotherhood. The apartment filled with the smell of gun oil and coffee. Leon cooked breakfast tacos from a food truck down the street. Davis monitored Ryan's movements through hacked traffic cameras and cell tower triangulation. Cole stared at tactical maps and tried to predict how Victor Sterling would play this. Wednesday arrived with clear skies and unseasonable heat. Texas in April, already climbing towards summer temperatures that made sweat a constant companion. By 1300 hours, Cole was dressed in civilian clothes with a concealed SIG P226 under his jacket. Same pistol he had carried for 20 years. 15 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. Safety off. Davis and Leon left first, drove separately to White Rock Lake, set up positions on the ridge overlooking the east parking lot, 400 meters out. Perfect range for observation and intervention if necessary. Cole drove alone, took surface streets instead of highways, watched for tails, checked mirrors constantly. The training never left you. You never stopped being tactical, even when the mission was personal. White Rock Lake sat in East Dallas, 9 miles from downtown. Popular recreation area, joggers and cyclists and families with children feeding ducks at the water's edge. The kind of place where violence felt impossible until it happened. Cole arrived at 1350 hours, parked in the east lot, scanned the area, saw families, saw couples, saw an old man sitting at a picnic table near the water, gaunt and yellowed, moving carefully like every motion caused pain. Victor Sterling, 20 years. Cole had imagined this moment in 1,000 different ways. Imagined violence and confrontation and justice delivered through a rifle scope or bare hands. But he had never imagined this. A dying man at a picnic table in a public park, looking small and defeated and nothing like the monster Cole had built him into. Cole's phone buzzed. Text from Davis. "We have eyes on. You're clear. No one else in position. No surveillance we can detect. Looks clean." Cole walked toward the picnic table. Each step felt like crossing a border between who he had been and who he was about to become. The distance from hunter to something else. Something he didn't have a name for yet. Victor looked up as Cole approached. His face was hollow, skin stretched tight over skull, eyes sunken but still intelligent, still calculating. The face of a man who knew he was dying but wasn't quite ready to surrender. "Sergeant Mackenzie, thank you for coming." Cole sat across the table, close enough to see the IV port under Victor's collar. The tremor in his hands, the way he breathed shallow like deep breaths hurt too much. 20 years. First time face-to-face since the documents were signed. "You look good," Victor said. "Still in fighting shape." "You look like death." 6 months, oncologist says. Optimistic estimate. Cancers in my pancreas, liver, lymph nodes. Metastatic. No treatment options left. I'm just managing pain until the end. Cole felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief. Just a cold assessment of the tactical situation. The man who had stolen his son was dying. The universe was handling justice without Cole having to pull a trigger. Why? Victor was quiet for a long moment, staring at the lake, watching ducks paddle through water that reflected clouds and sky like a mirror. "Because I thought I was saving him. From you. From what war had done to you. From what I'd seen happen to too many combat veterans and their families. I wasn't damaged. I was deployed. You were a Marine Scout sniper with 340 confirmed kills before your final deployment. You'd seen things, done things that change a man. I convinced myself that you'd come back broken, that Ryan deserved better than a father who might wake up screaming, who might mistake his son for an enemy in the dark, who might teach him to kill before teaching him to love. Cole's hand moved toward his pistol, every instinct screaming to end this, to put a bullet in the man who had justified stealing a child with such callous certainty. But Prophet's voice stopped him. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. You didn't save him, Cole said, voice cold and controlled. You stole him, and you murdered Kate to cover your tracks. Victor's face collapsed, the mask of justification crumbling into something that might have been genuine remorse, or might have been the acting skills of a lawyer who had spent 20 years lying. Yes, Kate found out what I'd done. She threatened to tell you, to expose the whole operation. I couldn't let that happen. So I tampered with her car, made it look like an accident. She died because she tried to do the right thing. That's on me. The confession hit like a fist. 20 years of suspecting, 20 years of private investigators and police reports, and knowing deep in his gut that Kate's death was an accident. And now confirmation. Simple, direct, unforgivable. Cole's hand was on his pistol. One motion and Victor Sterling would be dead. Justice for Kate. Justice for 20 stolen years. Justice for every night Cole had spent wondering if his son was safe, if his sister had died trying to protect him, if the system had failed or if he had failed the system. Then why am I here? Why confess now? Because I want those other children found. Want their families reunited. Want to burn down the whole operation before I die. Cole went very still. Other children? Victor pulled out a folder from beside him on the bench, slid it across the table. Inside were names, dates, locations. 33 families, 33 children taken from deployed military members through manufactured legal documents and coordinated corruption. Operation Guardian Shield, Victor said, started in '03, unofficial DOD program. Military lawyers and social workers identifying combat veterans deemed high risk for PTSD violence, taking their children preventatively, telling themselves we were protecting innocents from damaged warriors. Cole opened the folder, read names of Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, all deployed when their children disappeared, all processed through the same legal system that had stolen Ryan, all victims of people who thought they knew better than family courts and custody laws and the fundamental bond between parent and child. You were part of this? Running it? I was one of 12 lawyers. We had judges on payroll, social workers who falsified reports, a whole network designed to identify and extract children from military families we deemed unsuitable. We told ourselves it was noble work, protecting children. We were just trafficking kids to wealthy families who couldn't conceive. How many? 34 total. Ryan was number 28. The program shut down in '07 when one family fought back hard enough to expose the pattern. But by then the damage was done. 34 children scattered across the country with new names and new lives. Why tell me this? Victor met his eyes. Because Ryan's going to confront me tomorrow. He knows I'm not his biological father. He knows you're alive. He's been investigating for months. And when he demands the truth, I'm going to give it to him. All of it. The adoption fraud, Kate's murder, Operation Guardian Shield, everything. Cole tried to process this, tried to understand why a dying man would destroy himself in front of the son he had raised for 20 years. But if I tell him alone without you there to provide context, it will destroy him. He needs to hear my confession, but he also needs his real father there to help him process it, to give him something to hold on to when his entire world collapses. The manipulation was expert. Victor Sterling playing his final card, using Ryan as leverage to force Cole into cooperation, giving confession while simultaneously positioning himself as concerned parent protecting his son from trauma. You want me to help you confess, Cole said slowly, after you murdered my sister, after you stole my son, after you spent 20 years hiding. You want me to stand beside you and help your victim process the truth. I want you to be there for Ryan. That's what fathers do. Cole stood, looked down at the dying man who had destroyed his family, felt the weight of the pistol under his jacket. One shot. Victor would be dead before he hit the ground. Davis and Leon would extract him. No witnesses would identify him with certainty. He could walk away, and Victor Sterling's confession would die with him. But the folder sat on the table. 33 other families. 33 other children who deserved the truth. 33 other warriors who had served their country only to have it betray them through the people who were supposed to protect their families. Prophet's voice again. Sometimes the bravest choice is not pulling the trigger. Tomorrow, Cole said. Where and when? My house in Dallas, 1800 hours. I'll tell Ryan I need to talk to him. You'll be there. We'll tell him together. Cole picked up the folder. 33 families. 33 chances to do what Prophet had taught him in Helmand Province. Choose when to spare a target because killing him would create more enemies than it eliminated. I'm not doing this for you, Cole said. I'm doing it for my son and for every other family you destroyed. When this is over, you're going to face federal charges. You're going to testify. You're going to name every person involved, and you're going to die in custody answering for Kate's murder. Victor nodded slowly. I wouldn't have it any other way. Cole walked away, didn't look back. Felt Davis and Leon tracking his movement from 400 meters out. Felt the weight of the folder in his hands. Felt 20 years of hunting compress into one final decision. Kill Victor Stirring now and get revenge, or let him live long enough to help Ryan understand the truth. The parking lot was busy with families. Children laughing, couples holding hands, normal people living normal lives. Cole walked through them like a ghost, invisible, separate. A warrior who had learned that sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought with weapons. His phone buzzed. Davis. You didn't shoot him. Not yet. What's the play? Cole climbed into his truck, started the engine, looked at the folder on the passenger seat. 33 families destroyed by people who thought they were doing the right thing. Tomorrow we meet my son. Together. Victor confesses. Ryan learns the truth. And then we decide what happens next. The drive back to Fort Worth took 30 minutes. Leon and Davis were waiting at the surveillance apartment. Equipment packed. Rifles cleaned and stored. The tactical map on the wall covered in notes and analysis that suddenly felt obsolete. He's dying, Cole said it without preamble. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months maybe. Wants to confess everything to Ryan tomorrow. Wants me there when he does it. And Davis closed his laptop slowly. You believe him? I believe he's dying. I believe he murdered Kate. I believe everything else he said because dying men don't usually lie about things that can be easily verified. Leon studied the folder Cole had brought back. 34 names. Jesus. This was bigger than just Ryan. It was systematic, Cole said. Military lawyers targeting deployed service members. Taking their kids under the guise of protecting them from PTSD. Whole network of judges and social workers in on it. Ryan was just one case among dozens. The three men sat in silence, processing, understanding that what they had thought was personal tragedy was actually institutional betrayal. The system designed to protect military families had been weaponized against them. So what happens tomorrow? Davis asked. Tomorrow I meet my son for the first time in 20 years. Victor confesses. Ryan learns his entire life was built on lies. And I try to be the father I should have been 2 decades ago. And after? After, Cole said, looking at the folder. We help the FBA find the other 33 families. We burn down Operation Guardian Shield completely. We make sure this never happens again. What about Victor? Cole thought about Kate, about the woman who had loved her brother and her nephew and had died trying to protect them both, about 20 years of grief and rage and the justice she deserved. Victor lives long enough to make this right. Then he answers for Kate's murder. Natural causes or federal custody, either way he dies knowing he destroyed his own legacy. Leon nodded approval. Prophet would have made the same call. The night passed slowly. Cole stood at the window watching Ryan's house. Tomorrow his son would learn the truth. Would discover that his biological father had been alive this entire time, had been searching, had been watching, had found him months ago but waited to make contact. How do you explain that to someone? How do you justify watching from a distance? How do you tell your son that you needed to see what kind of man he became before you revealed what kind of man you were? The lights in Ryan's house went dark at 2100 hours. Bedtime. Cole imagined his son sleeping, imagined Emily beside him, imagined the peaceful ignorance of not knowing that tomorrow would shatter everything. Davis appeared beside him with coffee. You're going to tell him about Prophet, right? About the lessons, about choosing when not to shoot. Yeah, if he'll listen, he'll listen. He's been searching for you, posting on forums, filing FOIA requests. The kid wants to know his father. That's half the battle already won. Cole sipped coffee and watched the dark house and tried to remember what it felt like to hold his 4-year-old son. Tried to imagine that little boy grown into the man sleeping 3 blocks away. Tried to find words that would bridge 20 years of absence. Tomorrow would be the hardest mission of his life, not because it required tactical skill, but because it required something Marines didn't train for: emotional vulnerability, admitting failure, asking for forgiveness from someone who had every right to refuse it. The sun would rise in 6 hours. Thursday would arrive with its burden of truth and reckoning. Cole stood at the window and waited for dawn and wondered if his son would understand why some shots, no matter how justified, were better left untaken. The hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Prophet's wisdom. Victor Sterling, sitting at a picnic table dying of cancer. Ryan searching for a father he thought was dead. All of it converging tomorrow. All of it depending on Cole's ability to be something other than a sniper for the first time in 20 years. To be a father again, if his son would let him. The surveillance apartment felt smaller as the dawn broke over Fort Worth. 24 hours until Cole would stand face to face with his son for the first time in 2 decades. 24 hours to prepare for a conversation that could destroy what remained of Ryan's world, or rebuild something Victor Sterling had spent 20 years trying to erase. Cole hadn't slept, stood at the window watching Ryan's house through the pre-dawn darkness, waiting for the 5:30 morning run that came with the reliability of sunrise, trying to find words that would bridge the canyon between abandonment and explanation, between absence and love. Davis worked the laptops with the manic focus of a man who knew that intelligence failures cost lives. Pulling data, cross-referencing timelines, building a complete picture of Ryan's investigation, because going into tomorrow's confrontation blind was tactical suicide. Leon cleaned weapons that wouldn't be fired but needed to be ready anyway. The ritual of maintenance, the meditation of warriors who understood that preparation mattered more than execution. That showing up ready meant you might not have to act at all. "You need to eat," Leon said without looking up from the rifle he was breaking down. "Can't meet your son running on caffeine and rage." Cole didn't turn from the window. Eating required an appetite, required believing that tomorrow would be something other than the final destruction of every hope he'd carried for 20 years. At exactly 5:30, the front door of Ryan's house opened. His son emerged in running gear, stretched on the porch with movements that spoke to military discipline absorbed through genetics rather than training, then set off east toward the Trinity River Trail at a pace that made most recreational runners look like they were standing still. Cole watched until Ryan disappeared around the corner, felt the weight of 20 years compress into these final hours. Once Ryan knew the truth, once the confrontation happened, there would be no going back, no pretending, no surveillance from safe distances, just father and son, and 2 decades of questions that might not have answers. "We've got a problem," Davis said, voice tight with the kind of controlled alarm that meant something significant had shifted. Cole turned from the window. "What kind of problem?" Davis rotated the laptop so Cole could see the screen. Email from an FBI address, sent to Davis's personal account 4 hours ago while Cole had been staring at Ryan's dark house trying to remember what his son's voice sounded like. The email was brief and bureaucratic in the way that federal law enforcement used language as camouflage for threats. "Mr. Coleman, we are aware of your current activities in Fort Worth, Texas. We are also aware of the surveillance being conducted on Ryan Harper and the planned meeting between Cole Mackenzie and Victor Sterling. We strongly advise against any interference with ongoing federal investigation. Contact Special Agent Sarah Vance at the number below to discuss cooperation rather than obstruction." Leon stopped cleaning his rifle. "They've been watching us watch Ryan. How long?" Davis pulled up digital forensics. "Based on metadata and surveillance patterns I'm detecting, probably since we arrived. Maybe longer. Could be they've had Victor Sterling under investigation for months, and we walked into their operation without knowing it." Cole read the email again, trying to see past the official language to the tactical reality underneath. The FBI didn't send warning emails to private citizens unless those citizens were close to disrupting something important, which meant Victor's confession wasn't just about Ryan. It was about Operation Guardian Shield, about 33 other families, about systematic corruption worth federal resources. "Call the number," Cole said. "Find out what they want." Davis dialed on speakerphone. 3 rings, then a woman's voice. Professional, controlled, the kind of voice that came from years of interrogating people who thought they were smarter than federal agents. "Special Agent Sarah Vance. Mr. Coleman, thank you for calling promptly. Saves us both time. What do you want?" What I want is for Cole Mackenzie to not kill Victor Sterling before Sterling confesses on record to multiple federal crimes, including child trafficking, conspiracy, and murder. What I need is your cooperation in a case we've been building for 2 years. Cole took the phone from Davis. This is Mackenzie. Why are you investigating Victor? Sergeant Mackenzie, Agent Vance said, and Cole could hear her shifting gears, adjusting her approach for a different audience. We've been investigating the law firm Sterling worked for since 2022. Pattern of suspicious adoptions, military families targeted, children relocated and renamed. We identified Operation Guardian Shield through financial records and started building RICO case. How many families? We've confirmed 34. Sterling's file you received yesterday matches our count, but we need his testimony to implicate the judges, social workers, and other lawyers involved. Without his cooperation, we can only prosecute him. With it, we can dismantle the entire network. Cole processed this. The FBI had been working the same case he'd been living for 20 years. While he was searching for Ryan, they were building legal framework to destroy the system that enabled the theft. Different missions, same target. What about my son? That's where this gets complicated, Vance said. Ryan Harper has also been conducting investigation. His wife, Emily Torres, is actually one of our confidential informants. She married Ryan before she knew about the Sterling connection. When she made the link, she contacted us. We've been using her position at the VA to gather intel on Sterling's activities. The revelation hit like ambush fire. Emily Torres wasn't just Ryan's wife. She was FBI informant embedded in their lives, which meant everything Ryan thought he knew about his marriage might also be built on lies. The implications cascaded through Cole's tactical mind. Ryan had trusted Emily completely, had shared his investigation with her, had probably told her every fear and hope about discovering his real father, and she had been reporting all of it to federal agents. Not out of malice necessarily, maybe out of duty, maybe believing she was protecting Ryan. But betrayal was betrayal even when motivations were pure. How long has Emily been your informant? Since 2022, Vance said. We approached her when we identified the pattern of suspicious adoptions linked to Sterling's old law firm. She had just started at the VA, had security clearance for working with veterans. We asked her to monitor any connections between veterans and the Sterling adoption cases. She agreed, told us it was the right thing to do. And then she met Ryan. Correct, met him at a charity event 6 months after she started informing. They dated, fell in love. She ran his background before getting serious. Discovered his legal name was Ryan Harper, but his birth name was Ryan Mackenzie. Adoption processed through Sterling's firm. She realized she'd been assigned to monitor the exact network that had stolen her future husband as a child. Did she tell you immediately? No. She struggled with it for 3 months. Loved Ryan, but knew she had duty to the investigation. Finally contacted us. Said she wanted to marry him, but needed to know if that compromised her role as informant. We told her to proceed, that being married to a victim gave her better access to Sterling, that she could protect Ryan and help the investigation simultaneously. Cole felt sick. The FBI had approved Emily's marriage to Ryan knowing it was built on a foundation of surveillance and secrets. Had encouraged her to marry someone while hiding that she was investigating his adoptive father for federal crimes. The manipulation was professionally executed and morally bankrupt. Does Ryan know his wife works for you? Negative. Emily compartmentalized her role. She's a legitimate VA psychologist doing legitimate work. The informant role is secondary, but she's been monitoring Ryan's investigation and reporting back. We know he filed FOIA requests. We know he posted on military forums. We know he suspects Victor Sterling isn't his biological father. We know all of it because Emily reports directly to me every week. And tomorrow when Ryan learns the truth about Victor, Cole said slowly, he's also going to learn his wife has been lying to him about who she works for. You've set him up for double betrayal. We've protected him, Vance corrected. Sterling is dying and desperate. Without Emily monitoring the situation, we wouldn't have known if Sterling became violent or suicidal. We wouldn't have been able to intervene if Ryan was in danger. Emily's reports have kept your son safe for 2 years. By lying to him, by doing her job. Welcome to federal law enforcement, Sergeant Mackenzie. Sometimes protecting people means they don't get to know they're being protected. Sometimes the cost of safety is ignorance. Ryan will understand eventually. And you've been letting him investigate on his own, using him as an unwitting asset. We've been protecting him, Vance corrected. Sterling is terminal. Cancer, 6 months maximum. When desperate men face death, they become unpredictable. We couldn't risk Sterling harming Ryan before we secured his testimony. So we monitored. We waited. We prepared for multiple contingencies, including me showing up, especially you showing up. Sergeant Mackenzie, you're a trained military sniper with motive, means, and opportunity to execute Victor Sterling. From our perspective, you're the primary threat to this investigation. We've had surveillance on you since you arrived in Fort Worth. Cole looked at Davis and Leon. Both men's faces showed the same realization. They'd been running counter-surveillance against federal agents, thinking they were invisible, thinking their tradecraft was still sharp enough to operate undetected. Pride had made them sloppy. What do you want from me? Let Sterling confess to Ryan. Let the meeting happen tomorrow as planned. We'll have recording devices in place. Audio and video. Everything Sterling says will be evidence. After the confession, we move in. Arrest Sterling, process him through the federal system. Use his testimony to roll up the entire operation. And if I want to kill him instead, then you go to prison for murder and 33 other families never get justice. Your choice, Sergeant. Personal revenge or systemic change. The tactical math was simple. Kill Victor and satisfy 20 years of rage, or let him live long enough to destroy the network that had enabled him. One death versus accountability for dozens of perpetrators. Prophet's voice echoed across the years. Sometimes letting a target live serves the mission better than killing him. I won't interfere with your investigation, Cole said, but I'm not working for you. I'm there for my son. What happens after the confession is between Ryan and me, not you. Acceptable, Vance said. We'll stay back until Sterling confesses. After that, he's ours. You get your son. We get our case. Everyone wins except the people who stole children from deployed service members. The call ended. Cole handed the phone back to Davis and tried to process the new tactical situation. The FBI had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. Had been building the case while Cole was building his revenge plan. Had infiltrated Ryan's life through his wife while Cole watched from 3 blocks away, thinking he was the only one hunting. Emily's FBI, Leon said quietly. That changes the dynamic significantly. Ryan thinks he's investigating with his wife's support. Reality is he's being monitored by federal law enforcement. When he finds out, that's another betrayal on top of Victor's lies. Cole thought about tomorrow, about standing in front of Ryan and explaining 20 years of absence. And now Ryan would also be processing that his wife had been lying to him, that everyone in his life had agendas he didn't know about. That trust was apparently something other people didn't extend to him. The morning continued its relentless advance toward confrontation. Ryan emerged from his run at 06:15, showered, left for work at 0700. Emily departed 10 minutes later. Normal day for people who didn't know that tomorrow would shatter normalcy permanently. Davis pulled up new intel, got Ryan's search history from last night. He spent 4 hours researching you. Read every article about scout snipers. Watched YouTube videos about Helmand Province operations. Downloaded your service photos from military databases. He's building psychological profile, trying to understand who his biological father was before he meets him. Show me. The laptop screen filled with Ryan's digital footprint. Search terms, website visits, downloads. Each one a piece of a puzzle Ryan was assembling from fragments and memories and stories told by men who served with Cole in wars Ryan had been too young to understand. The search history revealed methodical investigations spanning months. Ryan hadn't just stumbled onto questions about his parentage. He'd been systematically dismantling Victor's lies piece by piece with the patience of a trained investigator. September 2023. First searches about Marine Scout snipers, general information, training requirements, historical deployments, basic research that could be innocent curiosity or the beginning of something deeper. October 2023. Specific searches for Cole Mackenzie, military records, service photos, deployment dates, the kind of targeted investigation that came from having a name and wanting to know everything about the person who carried it. November 2023. Genealogy websites, DNA tests ordered, family tree construction, Ryan mapping bloodlines, discovering Mackenzie relatives, finding connections Victor had spent 20 years trying to erase. December 2023. FOIA request filed, not just for Cole's records, but for adoption documents, court transcripts, legal filings related to Operation Guardian Shield. Ryan had found the pattern, had connected his case to 33 others, had realized Victor's crime wasn't isolated, but systematic. January 2024. Contact with other victims. Email exchanges with people who'd been stolen as children from deployed parents. Building network, comparing notes, coordinating investigations. Ryan wasn't just researching his own past. He was documenting an entire conspiracy. One particular search stood out: how to know if your father was a good man or a killer. The question cut deeper than any wound Cole had taken in combat, because the answer was complicated. He was both. Had been both. Sniper with 2,956 confirmed eliminations, and a father who sang lullabies to a 4-year-old boy. Warrior who chose when to spare targets, and a man who had spent 20 years wanting to kill Victor Sterling. But there was more. Searches about PTSD, about combat trauma, about what deployment did to families, about whether children of warriors inherited violence or discipline, or both. Ryan was trying to understand not just who Cole had been, but who Cole might have become. Whether genetic father would be safe to know or dangerous to approach. He's scared, Leon observed, reading over Cole's shoulder. Scared that genetic father will be a monster. That the DNA he inherited came from someone damaged beyond repair. That's why he goes to those VA support groups. He's preparing himself for the possibility that you're exactly what Victor told him you were. The thought made Cole want to put his fist through the wall. Victor had poisoned Ryan against him for 20 years, had planted seeds of fear that even genetic curiosity couldn't completely overcome. Ryan wanted to know his real father, but was terrified that knowing would confirm his worst fears. There was another layer to the search history. Ryan had been researching Prophet Cross, finding articles about the legendary staff sergeant who trained scout snipers, reading interviews, watching archived footage, understanding that Cole's mentor had been someone who taught restraint as much as lethality. He's looking for evidence you had good influences, Davis said. Wants to believe that if Prophet Cross trained you, you can't be completely damaged. He's building case for trusting you before he ever meets you. Then tomorrow I prove Victor wrong, Cole said. Show Ryan that warrior and monster aren't the same thing. That choosing not to kill when you have every justification is harder than pulling any trigger. But there was one search that stopped Cole cold. How to forgive an absent parent. Ryan wasn't just researching whether Cole was dangerous. He was preparing to forgive him. Researching how to reconcile love and anger and abandonment into something that allowed for relationship. The search history showed Ryan watching videos about adopted children reuniting with biological parents, reading psychology articles about processing childhood trauma, following forums where adult children discussed complicated relationships with parents who'd been absent. The kid wants you in his life, Leon said quietly. All this research isn't about determining if you're safe. It's about preparing himself to accept you even if you're not perfect. He's doing the emotional work before you've even met. That's impressive. Or it's setting himself up for disappointment, Cole countered. What if I can't be the father he's building in his imagination? What if reality doesn't match whatever ideal he's constructed from military hero stories and grandfather's wisdom? Then he adjusts, Davis said. Same as you'll adjust when you discover he's not the 4-year-old boy you remember. Both of you are walking into tomorrow with expectations that won't match reality. That's normal. That's every family reunion ever. You just have higher stakes than most. The afternoon brought new developments. Davis intercepted communication between Emily Torres and Agent Vance. Emily reporting that Ryan had taken the day off work tomorrow, that he'd told her he had an important meeting but wouldn't say with who, that he seemed nervous in a way she'd never seen before. He knows something's happening, Davis said. Doesn't know what, but his instincts are telling him tomorrow changes everything. Cole understood that feeling. The pre-mission tension. The knowledge that in 24 hours the world would be fundamentally different. Ryan had inherited that instinct. The ability to sense when tactical situation was about to shift. Genetic gift from a father he'd never met. Leon's phone rang. He answered, listen, then put it on speaker. The voice that emerged was older, gravelly, familiar in a way that made Cole's chest tighten. This is Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Blackwood, USMC retired. I'm looking for my son, Cole Mackenzie. Been told he might be at this number. Cole froze. His father, Thomas Blackwood, 82 years old. The man Cole hadn't spoken to in 25 years because of a fight about whether Cole was ready for combat. The man who had raised him alone after Cole's mother died. The man Cole had abandoned the same way he felt like he'd abandoned Ryan. Dad? Son, heard through the grapevine you finally found the boy. Thought I should call before tomorrow. Offer what wisdom an old man's got left. How did you know about tomorrow? Because I know you, know how you think. 20 years of searching ends in confrontation. You're either going to kill the man who stole your grandson, or you're going to do something harder. Thought maybe you could use reminder about which choice makes you the man I raised versus the man you're afraid you became. Cole sat down heavily. 25 years of silence. And his father calls the night before the most important moment of Cole's life. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. The history between them was complicated. Thomas Blackwood had served in Vietnam. Infantry. Came home in 1970 with wounds visible and invisible both. Raised Cole alone after Sarah Mackenzie died from cancer when Cole was 12. Did his best with a grief that made him hard and distant and sometimes cruel in the way that damaged men are cruel when they don't have language for pain. Their relationship had been built on discipline and duty. Thomas taught Cole to shoot before he taught him to drive. Taught him to navigate by stars before he taught him about girls. Prepared him for military service like it was inevitable. Like Blackwood men were born to serve and die in foreign countries for reasons politicians would forget before the bodies were cold. But when Cole enlisted at 18, Thomas had tried to stop him. You're not ready, he'd said. You think you know what war is because I told you stories. You don't know anything. You're going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever they send you, and you're going to learn that killing changes you in ways you can't anticipate. Wait, go to college first. Live a little before you volunteer to die. Cole had enlisted anyway. Too stubborn. Too convinced his father was wrong. Too desperate to prove himself to a man who seemed impossible to impress. They hadn't spoken since Cole left for boot camp. 25 years of silence while Cole deployed and married and divorced and lost his son and spent 2 decades hunting. Thomas had sent one letter when Ryan was stolen. Brief, clinical, said he'd heard through military channels what happened, said he was sorry, said if Cole needed anything to reach out. Cole never responded. Pride, anger, the belief that asking for help from the father who said he wasn't ready would be admitting defeat. And now Thomas was calling, after a quarter century, because Ryan had found him and built a bridge Cole was too damaged to construct himself. How did you find me? Your boy Ryan called me 3 weeks ago, found me in a veteran's home in Montana, told me everything about Victor Sterling, about the adoption fraud, about spending 24 years not knowing his real family, asked if I wanted to meet him, asked if I knew where you were. Ryan found you? Kid's a natural investigator, used genealogy websites and military databases, built family tree, tracked me down same way you probably would have if you weren't too stubborn to call your old man. We've been talking weekly. He wanted to understand his grandfather before he met his father. Wanted to know if the Mackenzie bloodline was worth claiming or if he should stay a Sterling. What did you tell him? Told him the truth, that Mackenzies are stubborn and loyal and we don't quit even when quitting would be smarter. That his grandfather served in Vietnam and came back different, but came back. That we don't talk about what happened over there, but we carry it anyway. That his father is the best damn sniper the Marine Corps ever produced, and if Victor Sterling convinced Ryan otherwise, then Victor Sterling is a liar on top of being a thief. Cole felt something crack in his chest. His father defending him to Ryan, building bridges across 3 generations, doing what Cole should have done years ago if pride hadn't kept them apart. I told Ryan about your mother too, Thomas continued, voice softening in a way Cole remembered from childhood, before the hardness set in. Before grief made his father into someone who couldn't show affection without violence. Told him Sarah was kindest person I ever knew. That she loved you more than life itself. That when cancer took her, part of me died too. That I was never the father I should have been because I was too broken from war and grief both. Told him you deserved better than me. That you tried to be better father to him than I was to you. That Victor stealing Ryan wasn't your failure. It was theft. Pure and simple. And that tomorrow when you meet face to face, Ryan should remember that good men can have bad things happen to them and still be good men. The absolution Cole didn't know he needed hit like incoming fire, his father absolving him. Explaining to Ryan that Cole's absence wasn't abandonment, That stolen children weren't the fault of fathers who couldn't protect them from legal systems weaponized by people who thought they knew better. Why didn't you tell me Ryan contacted you? Because I needed to know if you were going to kill Victor Sterling or if you were going to be the man Prophet Cross trained you to be. Ryan needed to know too. So we waited. We watched. We let you hunt and plan and position yourself for revenge. And now tomorrow we'll all find out who Cole Mackenzie actually is when he has perfect shot and has to choose whether to take it. The manipulation was expert, military, exactly the kind of thing Thomas Blackwood would do. Test his son's character by giving him rope to either climb out of darkness or hang himself with revenge. I talked to Emily too, Thomas added. Ryan's wife, she's a good woman, told me about her FBI work, about monitoring the investigation. She asked me if I thought Ryan could handle learning that his wife had been lying to him about who she worked for. I told her Ryan's a Mackenzie. We're good at being lied to. We've had practice. You knew Emily was FBI and didn't tell me? I knew a lot of things I didn't tell you. Same as you've known a lot of things you haven't told Ryan. We're all keeping secrets from each other, pretending it's protection when really it's just cowardice. Tomorrow that ends. Tomorrow everyone tells truth and we see if this family survives it. Cole closed his eyes. His father was right. They were all liars claiming noble motivation. Victor lied to protect Ryan from supposedly dangerous father. Emily lied to serve justice and protect investigation. Cole lied by omission by watching from distance instead of announcing himself. Thomas lied by staying silent for 25 years instead of reaching out. Everyone protecting everyone else from truth until truth became more dangerous than lies. You could have told me weeks ago that Ryan knew about me. Could have saved me from watching him from a distance like a stalker, and rob you of the chance to prove you're patient enough to wait for the right moment, rob you of demonstrating that you learned what Prophet taught about not taking shots that create more problems than they solve. No, son, you needed to earn this reunion. Ryan needed to see you earn it. Tomorrow you get your chance. The call ended before Cole could respond. Thomas Blackwood doing what he'd always done, dropping tactical wisdom disguised as family advice and letting Cole figure out how to execute it. Leon was grinning. Your dad still got it. 82 years old and running psychological operations on his own son. Davis pulled up new information. If Ryan contacted your father 3 weeks ago, then he's known about you longer than we realized. He's been investigating, parallel to us investigating him. Everyone watching everyone else. This is the most complicated surveillance operation I've ever seen, and nobody's getting paid for it. Cole tried to process the revelation. Ryan had found Thomas, had been talking to his grandfather, had been building a relationship with family while Cole watched from 3 blocks away, thinking his son was ignorant of the truth. The irony was almost funny. Hunter and prey both searching for each other, both finding pieces of the puzzle the other one held. What else has Ryan been doing that we don't know about? Davis typed rapidly, pulling deeper into Ryan's digital history. Let me check. His search patterns, his contacts, his travel, looking for anything that indicates he knew more than we thought. 10 minutes later, Davis had the answer. Oh, hell. Cole, Ryan's been in contact with 12 other families from Operation Guardian Shield. He found the pattern months ago, started reaching out, comparing stories, building network of people who were stolen as children from deployed parents. Show me. The screen filled with email chains, forum posts, private messages, Ryan Harper coordinating with other victims, sharing information, comparing legal documents, building case against Victor Sterling and the network that enabled him long before the FBI even knew Ryan existed. He's been running his own investigation for at least 6 months, Davis said. Since last October. Started when he found dog tags in Victor's attic. Your dog tags. Master Sergeant Cole Mackenzie, USMC, that was his thread. He pulled it and the whole thing unraveled. Which means tomorrow when we tell him the truth, Leon said slowly, he's going to tell us he already knows most of it. Kid's not a victim waiting to be saved. He's an investigator who's been building his own case. We've been underestimating him. Cole stared at the evidence of Ryan's investigation. His son had inherited more than just shooting ability. He'd inherited the patience, the methodical approach, the refusal to accept official stories when instinct said something was wrong. All the qualities that made Cole a successful sniper translated into civilian investigation skills that had led Ryan to the same conclusions the FBI had reached with federal resources. Does Victor know Ryan's been investigating? Based on surveillance of Victor's communications, Davis said, pulling up more files. Yes, Victor's been monitoring Ryan's activities, knows about the FOIA requests, knows about the genealogy searches. That's probably why he reached out to you yesterday. He realized Ryan was close to confronting him and wanted to control the narrative by bringing you into it. So everyone's known everything, Cole said, except me. Ryan knew about me. Victor knew Ryan was investigating. The FBI knew all of it. I'm the only one who thought I was hunting while everyone else was 3 steps ahead. Welcome to modern intelligence operations, Leon said. Nobody trusts anyone. Everyone surveils everyone. The truth gets revealed when all the competing investigations collide in the same place at the same time. That place was Victor Sterling's house tomorrow at 1800 hours. 3 generations of Mackenzies. 1 dying thief, and FBI surveillance recording everything for federal prosecution. The collision was going to be spectacular. The evening deepened. Ryan returned home from work, or rather from wherever he'd actually been because the GPS on his car showed he hadn't gone to Lockheed Martin. He'd driven to Dallas, to the courthouse, to pull legal records. He spent the day researching the adoption, Davis reported, getting copies of every document Victor filed, building timeline. The kid knows we're meeting tomorrow. He's preparing like it's a mission briefing. Maybe it is, Cole said. Maybe for Ryan, this whole thing is a tactical operation. Gather intelligence, assess threats, determine if biological father is asset or liability. He's approaching this like a Marine would, even though he's never served. Because he's your son, Leon said simply. Genetics don't lie, training helps, but instinct is inherited. Ryan's got warrior blood. Tomorrow he finds out what that means. Night fell over Fort Worth. Lights came on in Ryan's house. Cole watched through binoculars as his son and daughter-in-law ate dinner, as they talked about something that made Ryan agitated, as Emily put her hand on his and said something calming, as Ryan nodded but didn't look convinced. Cole's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. I know you're watching. I know you've been watching for months. Tomorrow at Dad's house, 1800 hours. I'll be there. Will you? The message was from Ryan, sent to the phone number Davis had used to post on Reddit as GhostOp48. Ryan had traced it back, had figured out Davis was watching him, had deduced that if Davis was watching, then Cole was nearby. How did he know? Davis demanded, reading over Cole's shoulder. Leon laughed quietly. Because he's good. Because he inherited his father's tactical mind. Because we trained him by making him figure out he was being watched. He learned counter-surveillance by doing it. Cole typed back a response. I'll be there. 3 dots appeared, Ryan typing. Then, are you the hero they said or the monster he claimed? The question Cole had been asking himself for 20 years. The question that would be answered tomorrow when Ryan looked into his father's eyes and decided whether genetic connection mattered more than 20 years of absence. Cole typed, tomorrow you decide. I'm just the man who never stopped searching for you. The dots appeared again, disappeared, appeared. Finally, we'll see. The conversation ended. Cole pocketed the phone and turned back to the window. Somewhere in that house 3 blocks away, his son was preparing for the same confrontation Cole was. Both of them scared, both of them hoping, both of them knowing that tomorrow would define the rest of their lives. You should sleep, Davis said for the 3rd time. Can't meet your son running on fumes. Cole finally stepped away from the window. Lay down on the couch they'd set up in the surveillance apartment. Closed his eyes but didn't sleep. Just ran through scenarios. Planned responses. Prepared for every possible outcome, from Ryan rejecting him completely to Ryan accepting him immediately to everything in between. Prophet's voice came through the darkness. The words he'd spoken in Helmand Province after Cole had chosen not to shoot the Taliban commander with his son in his lap. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. When you're staring through a scope at a target you've been hunting for months and you have every tactical justification to pull that trigger, choosing not to is what separates warrior from murderer. Remember that day. Remember that choice. Because someday you'll face harder decision than killing an enemy. You'll face choosing whether to destroy someone who deserves it or spare them for a greater purpose. Was that tomorrow? Was Victor Sterling the target Prophet had been preparing Cole to spare? Or was the real test something else? Choosing to let Ryan make his own decision instead of trying to control the narrative? Accepting that being father meant accepting your child's judgment even when it hurt? Sleep came in fragments, Dreams of Helmand Province mixed with memories of Ryan at 4 years old. Combat footage spliced with birthday parties. The smell of gun oil and baby shampoo somehow existing in the same memory. Cole woke every hour, checked his phone, watched Ryan's house, counted down hours until 1800 tomorrow. At 0300, Cole gave up on sleep, made coffee, stood at the window watching the house where his son slept and tried to remember the last time he'd felt this afraid. Not in combat. Combat was simple: kill or be killed. Clear objectives. Defined enemies. This was different. This was facing a young man who would judge him, who would decide if 20 years of searching mattered or if absence was still abandonment, no matter how justified. Who would look at Cole and see either salvation or just another person who had lied to him his whole life? Davis woke at 0400, joined Cole at the window without speaking. They stood together watching darkness fade to gray. Two warriors preparing for a mission that required no weapons but demanded more courage than any firefight. Leon woke at 0500, started making breakfast none of them would eat. The ritual of preparation, the motion of doing something useful when waiting felt unbearable. At 0530, Ryan's door opened. Morning run, 6 miles, perfect discipline. Cole watched his son disappear around the corner and wondered if this would be the last time he observed from a distance. If after tonight he would either be part of Ryan's life or permanently cut out of it. The day crawled toward 1800 hours, each minute stretching like hours. Cole cleaned his sidearm even though he wouldn't bring it. Changed clothes 3 times trying to decide what a father wore to meet the son who might hate him. Practiced what he would say until the words sounded hollow and rehearsed. At 1500 hours, Agent Vance called, confirming the FBI would have surveillance in place, audio and video, recording everything. She reminded Cole that Victor's confession was federal evidence, that interference would be prosecuted, that after Sterling confessed, federal agents would move in. At 1600 hours, Thomas Blackwood called again, this time video call, 82 years old, oxygen tank beside his wheelchair, emphysema from decades of cigarettes and who knew what else from Vietnam. You ready, son? No. Good. Man who's ready for this conversation hasn't understood what's at stake. Your boy's going to ask hard questions. You're going to want to justify yourself. Don't. Just tell truth. Let him decide what it means. What if he decides I'm not worth knowing? Then you respect that decision and spend rest of your life proving he was wrong. But I don't think that's what happens. I've talked to Ryan. Kid's angry, but he's curious. Wants to understand. Wants to believe his real father wasn't a monster. Give him reason to believe it. The call ended. Cole sat in silence. 1700 hours. 1 hour until confrontation. 1 hour until 20 years of searching ended in Victor Sterling's living room with FBI recording and Ryan watching and truth finally getting told. Davis and Leon prepared to move. They would be nearby, overwatch in case something went wrong, not interfering but present because Marines didn't let Marines face the hardest missions alone. At 1730, Cole left the surveillance apartment, drove through Fort Worth toward Dallas. Surface streets, no hurry, just steady progress toward the address Victor had provided, toward the house where Ryan would learn that his entire childhood was built on lies, where Victor would confess to murder and theft, where Cole would stand before his son and hope that blood mattered more than absence. The house was in North Dallas, expensive neighborhood, the kind of place lawyers who trafficked children could afford. Victor's car was in the driveway, lights on inside, stage set for the final act of a 20-year tragedy. Cole parked across the street, checked his phone. 1755, 5 minutes early, professional habit, never late, never unprepared, always positioned before the enemy arrived. Except Ryan wasn't the enemy. Ryan was the mission objective, the reason for 20 years of suffering. The son Cole had lost and found and was about to meet with no idea if the reunion would heal or destroy what remained of both their lives. A car pulled up, Ryan's Civic. He parked behind Victor's car, sat for a moment, gathering courage or resolving himself to whatever truth waited inside. Then he emerged, 24 years old, tall, lean, moving with the confidence of a man who knew he was walking into ambush, but went anyway because some battles couldn't be avoided. Cole's breath stopped, this close, 50 feet between them, father and son, separated by a street and 20 years in lies that had poisoned everything. Ryan walked to Victor's front door, knocked. waited. Cole's phone buzzed. Text from Davis. We're in position. Federal surveillance is active. You're clear to enter. Another text, this one from Ryan. Are you coming or not? Cole climbed out of his truck, crossed the street, walked toward his son's back as Ryan stood at the door waiting for Victor to answer. Walked toward the moment that would define every moment after. Walked toward truth and reckoning, and the hope that choosing not to kill Victor Sterling for 20 years would finally prove justified. Ryan turned, saw Cole approaching. Their eyes met for the first time in 2 decades. Father and son, hunter and prey, warrior and heir, all of it compressed into one moment on a doorstep in Dallas. The door opened. Victor Sterling stood there, dying, gaunt, ready to confess everything. Inside, the truth waited. 20 years of lies about to collapse. 3 generations of Mackenzies about to collide. And Cole walking into it unarmed, except for the hope that Prophet's wisdom was right. That some battles were won by not fighting. Some shots were better not taken. Some enemies were better left alive to face judgment from authorities more legitimate than personal revenge. The hardest choice was not pulling the trigger. Tomorrow would prove whether that choice had been worth it. Cole stepped across the threshold, into Victor's house, into confrontation, into the truth that would either save or destroy everything. Behind him, Davis and Leon watched from 400 meters away. Thomas Blackwood watched from Montana via phone. The FBI watched from hidden cameras. The whole world watching as one Marine tried to be a father instead of a killer. The door closed behind them, and the truth, after 20 years of silence, finally started speaking. Victor Sterling's living room smelled like death and expensive furniture polish. The kind of smell that came from a man trying to maintain appearances while his body consumed itself from the inside. Cole stepped through the doorway into a space designed to impress clients and intimidate opponents. Leather furniture, original art on walls, books arranged by color rather than content. Everything carefully curated to project success and stability. Everything except the medical equipment. Oxygen concentrator in the corner. Pill bottles arranged on the coffee table like soldiers on parade. A hospital bed visible through an open door down the hallway. The accoutrements of terminal illness invading the facade of professional achievement. Ryan stood near the fireplace, 24 years old, tall, lean, looking exactly like Cole had at that age except for the eyes. Ryan's eyes held something Cole's never had at 24. Suspicion. The wariness of someone who had learned early that the people who claimed to love you were often the ones who hurt you worst. Victor sat in a leather recliner positioned to give him view of both the door and the room. Strategic placement. Lawyer's instinct even while dying. He looked worse than he had 3 days ago at White Rock Lake. The cancer was accelerating, eating him faster than medicine could slow it down. Maybe weeks left instead of months. Emily Torres sat on the couch, small, professional, wedding ring catching light from the chandelier overhead. She looked at Cole with the careful assessment of someone trained to read people. FBI informant, seeing her husband's biological father for the first time, calculating how this would play, how much damage control would be needed when truth started flowing. The silence stretched like a wire pulled to breaking. 4 people in a room built for entertaining. 4 people carrying secrets that would destroy whatever illusions remained. 4 people waiting to see who would speak first. Cole studied Ryan across the space between them. 20 years of imagining this moment hadn't prepared him for the reality. The boy he'd left at 4 years old existed only in memory and photographs now. The man standing before him was a stranger who carried Cole's genes but Victor's history. Tall like Cole, lean like Cole had been at 24. Moving with unconscious grace that spoke to athletic conditioning and natural coordination both. But the eyes were different, not in color or shape, but in what they held. Cole's eyes at 24 had been eager, hungry for combat, desperate to prove himself. Ryan's eyes held wariness, the guardedness of someone who'd learned young that trust was luxury reserved for fools. 24 years of lies had taught Ryan to question everything, to trust nothing, to assume everyone had agenda hidden beneath whatever truth they claimed. The moment stretched. Cole could hear his own heartbeat, could feel Davis and Leon positioned somewhere outside with scoped rifles and federal agents probably in cars down the street. Could sense Emily's FBI training, calculating how to manage the conversation. Could feel Victor's cancer-accelerated breathing as dying man prepared for final confession. But most of all, Bone felt the weight of 2 decades. Every missed birthday, every graduation he hadn't attended, every skinned knee he hadn't bandaged, every nightmare he hadn't soothed, every moment of Ryan's life that had happened without him. All of it compressed into the space between father and son, into the distance that was simultaneously 3 feet in 20 years. Cole made that choice. Ryan, I'm Cole Mackenzie, I'm your father. The words landed like incoming rounds. Simple, direct, undeniable. 20 years compressed into one sentence that couldn't be unsaid. Cole watched Ryan's face for reaction, for recognition or rejection, for anything that would tell him whether this reunion would heal or destroy what remained of both their lives. Ryan didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at Cole with the kind of intensity that came from years of wondering and weeks of knowing and hours of preparing for this exact moment. His hands hung at his sides, relaxed, ready, the stance of someone who'd trained to fight even if he'd never served. Genetic memory of warrior bloodline expressing itself through muscle and bone. I know who you are, Ryan said finally, voice controlled, clinical, the tone of someone reciting facts to maintain emotional distance. Been researching you for 6 months, filed FOIA requests, talked to people who served with you, contacted Grandpa Thomas 3 weeks ago, built complete timeline of your service record and your search for me. Ryan paused, swallowed, the only sign he was human instead of tactical assessment machine. I know your master Sergeant Cole Mackenzie, Marine Scout Sniper, 2,956 confirmed kills across 3 deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. I know you took early retirement in 2005 after I was stolen. Medical discharge for PTSD that wasn't from combat, but from losing your son. I know you've been searching for me for 20 years. I know you spent every dollar, took contracts in Brazil and Ukraine and back to Afghanistan. I know you nearly killed yourself in Oregon in 2015 when a lead turned cold. The specificity shocked Cole. Ryan hadn't just researched, he'd investigated with professional thoroughness, had built psychological profile, had tracked every movement across 2 decades, had probably talked to people Cole didn't even remember meeting. I know you found me 3 months ago, Ryan continued. Know you've been watching my house from that apartment building 3 blocks away. Know you've been tracking my patterns, morning runs, range time, work schedule, everything. Know your friend Davis Coleman posted on Reddit claiming to have served with you. Know your friend Leon Torres did the same. I know everything about you except one thing. Ryan stepped forward, closing distance. 2 feet between them now. Close enough that Cole could see his own features reflected in his son's face. The genetic mirror that couldn't be denied. Why did you wait 3 months to knock on my door? Why watch from a distance instead of introducing yourself? Why let me spend weeks thinking my father might be dead when you knew exactly where I was? The question Cole had been dreading. The one that had no good answer because the truth sounded like excuse no matter how it was framed. Because I needed to know what kind of man you became before you knew what kind of man I am. Needed to see if Victor turned you into someone who would reject me. Or if genetics were strong enough that you'd want to know your real father even after 20 years of lies. Ryan absorbed this, processing, computing, running calculations that would determine whether to accept explanation or reject it as insufficient. Victor coughed, wet and painful, the sound of lungs failing. He reached for oxygen mask, took several breaths, and then lowered it and spoke with the measured precision of a man who knew his words were limited. He watched you because he's a sniper. That's what they do. Observe, calculate, wait for the perfect shot. He spent 20 years hunting me. 3 months confirming you were worth saving from me. Classic reconnaissance. Military precision applied to civilian problem. Don't speak for me, Cole said without looking at Victor. You lost that right when you stole my son. Victor smiled, bitter, knowing I stole a lot more than that. Stole 20 years of your life. Stole Ryan's childhood. Stole Kate's future when she tried to stop me. Stole 33 other children from 33 other military families. I've been stealing for decades and convincing myself it was noble work. Emily leaned forward, her psychologist training evident in body language. Open, engaged, ready to mediate the conversation toward productive outcome instead of violence. Victor called this meeting to confess, to tell Ryan everything before the cancer takes him. Cole is here because Ryan deserves to hear truth from both the man who raised him and the man who made him. I'm here because someone needs to make sure this conversation doesn't end in bloodshed. And why are you really here? Ryan asked his wife, the edge in his voice suggesting he knew more than Emily expected. Because you care about me? Or because the FBI, I asked you to monitor this confession? The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Emily's face went carefully neutral, professional mask sliding into place. But her eyes showed surprise. Ryan wasn't supposed to know about her FBI connection. How long have you known? Emily asked quietly. 2 weeks. Found emails you thought you'd deleted. Secure communications with Agent Sarah Vance. Reports about my investigation. Updates on Victor's condition. Everything. You've been informing on me since before we got married. Fell in love with a case file and decided to marry it to protect your cover. The accusation hit Emily like physical blow. She looked at Ryan with genuine pain in her eyes, the kind that couldn't be faked even by trained federal informant. That's not how it happened. I was assigned to monitor Operation Guardian Shield before I met you. When I realized you were connected, I reported it. But I married you because I loved you, not because of the case. Did you? Ryan's voice was cold, analytical. Or did you love the idea of solving a federal case while playing house with one of the victims? Did you report our pillow talk to your handler? Did you write memos about how traumatized I was learning my whole life was a lie? Emily opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing she could say would make it better. The truth was complicated, and complications looked like lies when trust was already shattered. Victor coughed again, longer this time, more painful. When he finished, blood flecked his lips, time running out, body failing faster than conversation could resolve. We can deal with marriage counseling later. Right now we deal with truth. 20 years of lies ending tonight. Ryan deserves to know everything. Cole deserves to know of everything. And I deserve to confess before cancer steals my voice permanently. He gestured to the coffee table where a folder sat beside the pill bottles. Same folder he'd given Cole at White Rock Lake, Operation Guardian Shield. 34 names, 34 stolen children. I was part of a program that started in 2003, called Operation Guardian Shield. Unofficial DoD initiative. Military lawyers and social workers identifying combat veterans deemed high risk for PTSD violence. The idea was preventative protection. Remove children from potentially dangerous situations before violence occurred. Victor paused for oxygen, the mask fogging with each labored breath. When he lowered it, his voice was weaker, but determined. Running on borrowed time and stubbornness. It started with good intentions. At least we told ourselves that. The statistics were real. Domestic violence rates among returning combat veterans were climbing. Alcohol abuse, drug addiction, suicide. Families destroyed by invisible wounds of war that didn't show up on physical exams. We saw children caught in crossfire of parents who came back from deployments different, changed, damaged in ways that manifested as rage or addiction or complete emotional shutdown. So some of us, Victor continued, gesturing vaguely like he was indicating invisible conspirators, decided we could intervene earlier, could identify the highest risk cases and remove children before violence occurred. Before the statistics became real, kids with real trauma. We convinced ourselves it was preventative medicine, psychological prophylaxis against the inevitable breakdown we'd seen too many times. The program was elegant in its evil. We targeted families where one parent was deployed and the other was absent, dead, or demonstrably unstable. We fabricated psychological evaluations citing combat trauma that hadn't manifested yet, but that we predicted would. We forged signatures on documents. We manipulated legal proceedings in jurisdictions where judges were cooperative or could be bought. We made it all look legitimate. Court orders, proper procedures, everything documented and filed and stamped with official seals. You decided you knew better than family courts, Cole said, voice hard and cold. Decided deployed service members were guilty until proven innocent. Decided children belonged to people with money instead of people with bloodlines. We convinced ourselves we were heroes, Victor said, and his laugh turned into another cough. Blood darker this time, lungs failing faster. We had data, we had statistics, we had predictions from military psychologists about which veterans would snap and which wouldn't. We thought we were being scientific, evidence-based, following the numbers to logical conclusions. But the truth was simpler and uglier. We were trafficking children to wealthy families who couldn't conceive naturally. Families who had money and connections and who wanted children without the mess of traditional adoption processes. We gave them what they wanted and told ourselves it was noble work. Child protection, preventative intervention, anything except what it actually was, theft. How many? Ryan asked from his position by the window, voice tight with controlled rage. How many families did you destroy convincing yourselves you were heroes? 34 confirmed cases, Victor admitted. Could be more. Records weren't always complete. Some cases were handled by lawyers who've since died or disappeared. But 34 I can document. 34 children stolen from deployed parents. 34 families shattered. Your adoption was case number 6 in my personal count. 8 total I handled directly. Each one I justified. Each family I convinced myself was better off without their biological children. The math was brutal. 34 families, potentially hundreds of people affected, parents, siblings, grandparents, extended family. Each case rippling outward like rounds hitting water, destroying lives in expanding circles that touched people who would never know why their families fractured. Who were the others? Cole asked. The other lawyers, the judges, the social workers, everyone involved in this conspiracy. Victor gestured weakly toward the folder on the coffee table. Names, positions, jurisdictions, everything the FBI needs to prosecute. 12 lawyers across 6 states, 8 judges who rubber-stamped proceedings, 14 social workers who falsified reports, 6 military officials who provided access to deployment records and psychological evaluations. Whole network of people who thought they were doing right thing or who at least thought they wouldn't get caught. Some believed the mission, Victor continued. Genuinely thought they were protecting children from damaged veterans. Others were just corrupt. Took money from adoptive families desperate enough to pay anything. Moral justification versus simple greed. Both led to same result, stolen children and destroyed families. Cole felt rage building in his chest, the same rage that had sustained him through 20 years of searching, the rage that had kept him alive when suicide looked easier than continuing. But Prophet's voice cut through the anger. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. This wasn't the moment for violence. This was the moment for truth. Tell him about Kate, Cole said. Tell Ryan what you did to my sister. Victor's face collapsed, the professional mask crumbling into genuine remorse, or what looked like remorse. Hard to tell with lawyers. Hard to tell with dying men who wanted absolution before facing whatever came after. Kate was my wife, Ryan's aunt. She was part of Operation Guardian Shield from the beginning. She helped identify targets, helped process paperwork. She wanted a child so desperately that she convinced herself stealing one was acceptable if the biological parents were dangerous. Ryan stood abruptly, paced to the window, looked out at the Dallas neighborhood where families lived normal lives built on foundations that didn't include conspiracy and murder. Aunt Kate knew she helped you steal me? Initially, yes. Victor's voice dropped to whisper. She thought Cole was too damaged from combat, thought you deserved stable home, thought we could give you better life than a single father deployed to war zones. She signed the adoption papers. She helped forge the psychological evaluations. She moved us to Texas to hide you from anyone who might recognize you. But she changed her mind, Cole said. Didn't she? She realized what you'd done was wrong and she tried to stop it. Victor nodded, reached for oxygen mask again, breathed deep before continuing. 7 months after we took Ryan, Kate started having doubts. She saw how much you loved him, Cole. Saw how much losing him destroyed you. She found your letters. The ones you wrote to Ryan from Helmand Province. Hundreds of pages. A deployed father pouring his heart out to a son who would never read them because we'd stolen him. Where are those letters? Ryan asked without turning from the window. I burned them, Victor admitted. Kate wanted to send them to you. Wanted to give them to Ryan when he was old enough to understand. I destroyed them because they were evidence of my crime. Evidence that Cole Mackenzie was a loving father instead of a dangerous veteran. Evidence that contradicted every lie I'd told. Ryan's shoulders tensed. Cole watched his son process this. Process that documentation of his father's love had existed and been destroyed. Process that the woman he'd been told was his aunt had initially helped steal him, then tried to return him. Kate threatened to expose Operation Guardian Shield, Victor continued. Not just our case, but all 34. She was going to contact Marine Criminal Investigation Division. Going to testify against everyone involved. Going to destroy careers and families to make things right. So you killed her, Cole said. Made it look like accident. I tampered with her car. Made it look like brake failure. She died because she chose you and Ryan over me. Chose truth over comfortable lie. She died a hero trying to undo her mistakes. And I killed her to protect myself. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Murder admitted, motive explained, 20 years of wondering confirmed in 3 sentences. Emily had her phone out. Recording, visible on the coffee table. FBI getting their evidence. Victor's confession documented for federal prosecution. But the recording wasn't hidden. Victor knew, had agreed to this, was confessing on record because he wanted accountability. There's more, Victor said. The confession you need to hear to understand why I did everything. Why I convinced myself I was saving you, Ryan. Why I spent 20 years running from Cole instead of facing what I'd done. Ryan turned from the window, faced Victor for the first time since the confession started. What could possibly justify murdering your wife and stealing someone's child? I can't have children. Victor's voice broke. Medical issue, low sperm count. Kate and I tried for 8 years, every treatment, every option. Nothing worked. We were told adoption was our only path. But traditional adoption had waiting lists and requirements and judgment. Operation Guardian Shield gave me a shortcut. Gave me a child from a family I convinced myself didn't deserve him. You're saying you stole me because you wanted to be a father? Ryan's voice dripped contempt. That's your justification? Infertility made you commit kidnapping and murder? No justification. Just explanation. I wanted to be a father so badly I convinced myself taking someone else's son was acceptable. Convinced myself Cole was too damaged to parent. Convinced myself I could give you better life. And when Kate tried to stop me, I convinced myself her death was necessary to protect you. You didn't protect me, Ryan said. You imprisoned me in a lie for 24 years. You made me believe my real father was dead. You made me think my genetics came from a monster. You stole my identity and my family and my entire childhood. Don't pretend that was protection. Cole watched his son, watched the anger, the grief, the processing of betrayals stacked on betrayals. Victor had stolen him. Kate had helped, then died trying to return him. Emily had married him while informing to FBI. Everyone in Ryan's life had lied except the grandfather he'd found on his own and the father he'd researched from a distance. Victor coughed blood into a towel, the cancer accelerating, body shutting down under the stress of confession. He looked at Cole with eyes that held something between pleading and acceptance. I know you want to kill me. Know you've wanted to for 20 years. Know you probably have a dozen different ways planned. But I'm asking you to wait. Let me finish the confession. Let me name everyone involved in Operation Guardian Shield. Let me help the FBI reunite those 33 other families. Let me do one good thing before I die. The choice Prophet had warned him about. Kill Victor now and satisfy personal revenge. Or let him live long enough to serve greater purpose. One death versus justice for dozens. Cole looked at Ryan, at his son standing in the ruins of every lie he'd believed, at the young man who needed to see his biological father demonstrate what warrior meant versus what monster meant. I'm not going to kill you, Cole said. Not because you deserve mercy, but because those 33 families deserve truth. Because Ryan deserves to see that revenge isn't the same as justice. Because Prophet Cross taught me that the hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Victor nodded, grateful, pathetic. Dying man receiving undeserved grace. Agent Vance is listening, Emily said quietly, gesturing to recording device on the table. Everything you've said is evidence. When this meeting ends, federal agents will arrest you. You'll die in federal custody. But your testimony will dismantle the network. We'll reunite families. We'll prevent this from happening to others. Good, Victor said. That's appropriate. I should die answering for what I did. Ryan moved from the window to stand directly in front of Cole. Father and son, 20 years apart, 3 feet between them now. Ryan studied Cole's face, looking for something, searching for proof that genetics mattered, that blood was stronger than lies. Grandpa Thomas said you're the best sniper the Marine Corps ever produced, said you made impossible shots, said you brought your team home when others would have failed. Is that true? Yes. He also said Prophet Cross taught you that knowing when not to shoot was more important than knowing how to shoot. Said the measure of a warrior isn't confirmed kills, but wisdom to spare targets that serve the mission better alive. Is that true too? Yes. Ryan nodded slowly, processing, computing. Then he asked the question Cole had been dreading since the moment they entered this house. Why should I believe you're my father and not just another person using me for their agenda? Victor used me to play house. Emily used me to serve her investigation. How do I know you're not using me to satisfy some need to be a father again? The question was fair. Brutal, but fair. Ryan had learned not to trust people who claimed to love him, had learned that everyone wanted something, had learned that truth was usually just a variation of lies. Cole could give tactical answer, could cite genetics and service records in Thomas Blackwood's testimony, could point to 20 years of searching as evidence of commitment, could argue that watching for 3 months instead of approaching immediately showed he cared about Ryan's well-being more than his own need for reunion. But tactics weren't what Ryan needed. Ryan needed honesty raw enough to hurt. You can't believe it, Cole said. Can't trust it. Can't know for certain that I won't hurt you the way everyone else has. All you have is my word. And my word is this. I spent 20 years searching for you, not because I needed to be a father, but because you needed to know your real father. I watched you for 3 months because I wanted to make sure you were happy before I destroyed that happiness with truth. I'm standing here unarmed in a room with the man who murdered my sister because I want you to see that warrior means choosing not to kill even when you have every right to. I can't promise I'll be perfect father. Can't promise I won't make mistakes. Can't even promise our relationship will work after tonight. But I can promise that everything I do from here forward will be about what you need, not what I need, not what Victor wants, not what the FBI requires, what Ryan Mackenzie needs to heal from 24 years of lies. The name hit Ryan visibly. Mackenzie, his birth name, the identity Victor had stolen and Cole was offering back. Ryan Mackenzie died when Victor took me, Ryan said. I've been Ryan Harper for 20 years. Don't know how to be anyone else. Then maybe we figure that out together, Cole offered. No pressure, no expectations, just father and son learning who each other actually is instead of who we're supposed to be. Ryan looked at Emily, at his wife who had lied, at the woman he loved who had also betrayed him. What happens with us? Emily met his eyes, didn't flinch from the pain there. That's your choice. I love you. That was never a lie, but I also served an investigation I believe was right. Can't apologize for trying to help reunite stolen children with their families, even if it meant lying to you. Can't apologize for not being honest earlier. Can't apologize for letting you find out this way. Ryan turned to Victor. What happens to you? FBI arrests me tonight. I testify against everyone involved in Operation Guardian Shield. I die in federal custody probably within weeks. My legacy will be as a man who stole children and murdered his wife. That's what I deserve. And the other families? The 33 others you helped destroy? Victor gestured to the folder. Names, dates, locations, everything the FBI needs to find them. Some will want reunion, some won't. But they'll have choice. Something I took from them. Something I'm giving back before I die. Cole watched the exchange. Watched Ryan process. Watched his son demonstrate the same tactical assessment Cole had used in Helmand Province. Gathering information. Analyzing variables. Making decisions that would define the future. I need time, Ryan said finally. Need to process this. Need to figure out who I am when everyone I trusted was lying. Need to decide if I can forgive any of you or if I'm better off alone. That's fair, Cole said. Take all the time you need. I've waited 20 years. I can wait longer if that's what you need. Ryan moved toward the door. Emily stood to follow. He held up hand. Stop. I need space from all of you, including you. Emily's face showed pain, but she nodded. Accepting, understanding. Ryan walked out, left them standing in Victor's living room. Left without resolution or forgiveness or even acknowledgement that father and son would ever speak again. The door closed. Silence descended. 3 people remained. Cole, Emily, Victor dying in his chair. Federal agents will be here in 10 minutes, Emily said, checking her phone. Victor, you'll be taken into custody, transported to federal medical facility. Arraignment will happen from hospital bed if necessary. Victor nodded, accepted this, looked at Cole with something like respect. Thank you for not killing me. Know it cost you. Know you wanted to. Know every instinct said I deserved it. Don't thank me, Cole said. I didn't spare you for your sake. Spared you for Ryan's sake. For those 33 families. For Prophet's memory. You're still going to die, just going to die having done one decent thing instead of being remembered only for evil. Decent is generous, Victor said. But I'll take it. Emily packed her recording equipment. Professional, efficient, FB agent completing her mission. But her hands shook slightly. The cost of maintaining cover while watching husband walk away. He'll come back, Cole said. Maybe not today. Maybe not soon. But Ryan's a Mackenzie. We don't quit even when quitting is easier. He'll process. He'll investigate more. He'll decide for himself what truth means. And then he'll make his choice. How can you be sure? Because he spent 6 months researching me before tonight. Spent weeks talking to Thomas. Spent hours reading about scout snipers and combat deployments and what war does to families. He's been preparing to accept me. Just needs time to reconcile expectation with reality. Outside, sirens approached. FBI arriving on schedule, taking Victor into custody, beginning the legal process that would dismantle Operation Guardian Shield and reunite families and ensure this particular evil couldn't replicate. Cole walked to the door, stopped, turned back to Victor. Kate loved you, even after she realized what you'd done, even when she threatened to expose you. She loved you and thought you could be better. That's why she gave you the chance to confess instead of going straight to authorities. You killed her for mercy she showed you. I know, Victor whispered. I live with that every day. Die with it too. Good. Live with it. Die with it. Maybe wherever you're going, you'll answer for it. Cole stepped out into Texas evening. Davis and Leon waiting in truck across the street. Thomas Blackwood probably watching via phone from Montana. Ryan somewhere in Fort Worth processing the fact that his entire life had been built on lies, but his future could be built on truth. The FBI descended on Victor's house. Agents in windbreakers. Paramedics with stretcher. Official vehicles with lights. The apparatus of federal law enforcement collecting evidence and testimony, and the dying man who would give them both. Cole climbed into the truck. Davis drove. Leon rode shotgun. Nobody spoke. Just 3 Marines who had spent 20 years hunting a target and finally chose not to kill him when the perfect shot presented itself. The drive back to Fort Worth took 30 minutes. Time enough for Cole to process what had happened. He'd met his son, had stood 3 feet from Ryan, and looked into eyes that held his genetics and Kate's memory in 24 years of lies. Had offered truth and received uncertainty in return. No guarantee Ryan would accept him. No promise of relationship. Just the possibility that father and son might build something from ruins of what Victor had destroyed. Prophet had been right. Hardest shots were the ones you didn't take. Cole had wanted to kill Victor Sterling for 20 years. Had planned it. Had positioned himself perfectly. Had every moral and emotional justification. And in the moment when it mattered, when Ryan was watching, when the choice would define whether Cole was warrior or murderer, he had chosen mercy over revenge. Not for Victor's sake. Victor deserved death and worse. But for Ryan's sake. For the 33 families. For Prophet's memory. For the hope that choosing not to kill was strength instead of weakness. The surveillance apartment felt empty. Equipment being packed. Tactical maps coming down. The mission was ending, even if the outcome remained uncertain. Your father called, Davis said, handing Cole a phone. Wants to talk. Cole took the phone, sat in the chair by the window where he'd watched Ryan's house for 3 months. Dialed Thomas Blackwood. Son, heard the meeting happened. Heard you let Victor live. Heard Ryan walked out without committing to anything. How you holding up? Honestly? Don't know. Did what I thought was right. Proved to Ryan that I'm not the monster Victor claimed. But don't know if that's enough. Don't know if he'll ever want me in his life. He will, Thomas said, with the certainty of a man who'd lived 82 years and learned to read people. Kid spent 6 months researching you. Weeks talking to me. Hours preparing himself emotionally. He's not walking away. He's processing. Taking time to reconcile reality with expectation. Give him space. He'll come back. What if he doesn't? Then you respect that. Live your life. Be available if he changes his mind. But you don't chase him. Don't pressure him. Don't make him feel obligated. You gave him truth. Now you let him decide what to do with it. That's harder than any mission I ran in Helmand. Thomas laughed. Dry. Knowing. Being a father is always harder than being a warrior. War has rules, clear objectives, defined enemies. Family is complicated, messy, no guarantees. You just do your best and hope it's enough. The call ended. Cole sat in silence, thinking about Ryan, about the son who looked like him and moved like him and thought like him, but had spent 24 years believing he was someone else. Thinking about Victor confessing, about Kate trying to make things right and dying for it, about Emily serving two masters and losing her husband because of it, about Thomas reaching across 25 years of silence to help bridge 3 generations. Thinking about profit, about lessons learned in Helmand Province, about knowing when to shoot and when to spare, about the hardest choices being the ones that look like weakness, but required more strength than violence ever did. Davis and Leon finished packing equipment. The surveillance operation was over. Time to return to California, to 29 Palms, to teaching young Marines skills that felt obsolete in age of drones and satellites, but would matter when technology failed and all they had was training and instinct. "You coming back with us?" Leon asked. Number: going to stay in Texas for a while, rent an apartment, be available if Ryan decides he wants to talk. Won't pressure him, won't watch him, just be nearby, close enough to respond if he reaches out, far enough away to give him space. "You're really going to wait for him to make first move?" Prophet taught me patience. 20 years of searching taught me persistence. Now I learned the hardest lesson: waiting for someone else to choose you instead of choosing them yourself. Davis nodded, understanding. "We'll cover your classes at 29 Palms. Tell them you're on family leave. Take all the time you need." The two of them left, Cole alone in the empty apartment, equipment packed except for one laptop, one phone, one connection to the world Ryan inhabited somewhere in Fort Worth. His phone buzzed, text from unknown number. Cole's heart rate spiked. Maybe Ryan, maybe reaching out already. Maybe the processing had been quick and the decision made. But the text was from Emily, short, professional, wounded. Ryan filed for separation, moving out tomorrow, said he needs time apart from everyone including me. Thought you should know. Don't contact him. Let him come to you. That's what he needs right now. Cole typed back. Understood. Thank you for telling me. For what it's worth, I think you were in an impossible situation. Served your duty and loved your husband. Both were real, even if they conflicted. Her response came quickly. Doesn't make it hurt less. Doesn't make him trust me again. But thank you. The night deepened. Cole stood at the window looking out at Fort Worth. Somewhere in this city, his son was packing belongings and leaving a marriage built on lies. Somewhere Ryan was processing that his father, his aunt, his adoptive father, and his wife had all lied to him. That everyone he trusted had agendas he didn't know about. And somewhere Ryan was deciding whether blood mattered, whether genetics were stronger than betrayal, whether giving Cole Mackenzie a chance was worth the risk of more pain. Cole had no control over that decision. Could only wait. Could only hope that 20 years of searching and 3 months of watching and 1 night of choosing mercy over revenge would be enough to prove he was worth knowing. The hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Prophet's wisdom, tested in Helmand Province, proven in Victor Sterling's living room, applied now to the agonizing wait for a son to decide if his father deserved a second chance. Cole Mackenzie, 48 years old, Master Sergeant USMC retired, 2,956 confirmed kills, 0 family members who trusted him completely. But hope, fragile and painful and uncertain, hope that maybe choosing not to kill had been the right choice, that maybe mercy was strength, that maybe being a father meant waiting for your child to choose you instead of demanding they accept you. The city lights blurred. Cole realized he was crying, first time in 20 years, not from grief, not from rage, from something stranger. Relief. The hunt was over. Victor would die in federal custody. The 33 families would get truth. Ryan knew his real father existed. Everything after was choice. Ryan's choice. And Cole would wait for that choice however long it took. Because that's what fathers did. They waited. They hoped. They chose not to take the shot, even when every instinct said pull the trigger. And they trusted that someday, maybe, their children would understand why. 6 weeks of silence felt longer than 20 years of searching. Cole rented a 1-bedroom apartment in Fort Worth, 3 miles from where Ryan had lived with Emily. Close enough to respond if his son reached out. Far enough to give space for healing or deciding the wound was too deep to close. The apartment came furnished in beige and forgettable. Corporate housing designed for temporary occupants who wouldn't care about personality or comfort. Perfect for a man whose entire life had been temporary since the day Victor Sterling stole his son. Cole unpacked the go bag he'd lived out of for 2 decades, kept his phone charged and volume high, waited. Davis and Leon returned to California. covering Cole's instructor duties at 29 Palms, telling the young Marines that Sergeant Mackenzie was on family leave, would return when family business was concluded. The lie was kind and close enough to truth that it didn't matter. Thomas called every 3 days, checking in from the veteran's home in Montana, offering wisdom Cole didn't want but probably needed, reminding him that patience was warrior virtue, same as discipline or courage. That waiting for Ryan to choose him was harder than any shot Cole had ever taken, but would matter more than all 2,956 confirmed kills combined. The first week Cole watched news about Operation Guardian Shield. FBI had moved fast after Victor's confession. Arrests across 6 states, lawyers and judges and social workers taken into custody, military officials relieved of duty pending investigation. The conspiracy that had stolen 34 children was collapsing under weight of federal prosecution and media attention. Victor Sterling died on day 8. Pancreatic cancer accelerated by stress of confession. He died in federal medical facility in Dallas, with FBI agents outside his door and no family at his bedside. Died knowing he'd destroyed his own legacy. Died having given testimony that would reunite families even if it couldn't redeem his soul. The obituary was brief and factual. Former Marine JAG officer, former attorney, survived by no one, services private. Cole read the obituary 3 times, felt nothing except mild satisfaction that Victor had died alone, had faced death without the son he'd stolen or the wife he'd murdered. Prophet would have said that was justice enough, that killing Victor would have been mercy compared to dying isolated and hated. Cole chose to believe that, chose to think that sparing Victor had been right choice, even if it felt empty. Emily Torres testified before federal grand jury on day 12. Her role as FBI informant became public record. The media found the story irresistible. VA, a psychologist married to victim of the conspiracy she was investigating. The ethical complications, the personal cost. Emily handled press attention with professional dignity, but Cole saw the toll in photographs. She looked exhausted, hollowed out, a woman who had served her duty and lost her marriage in the process. Ryan remained silent. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement that Cole existed 3 miles away, waiting for decision that might never come. Cole respected the silence even though it hurt worse than any wound he'd taken in combat. At least in combat, you knew whether you lived or died. This limbo was knowing you might be dead to your son, but wouldn't know for certain until he decided to tell you. The FBI released names of the 34 families on day 15. Operation Guardian Shield's victims made public. Cole saw his name on the list, saw Ryan's birth name. Ryan James Mackenzie, stolen 2005, reunited 2024. Status, biological father located, reunion pending, victim decision. The phrase victim decision cut deep. Ryan was victim, had been victim his entire life. First of Victor's theft, then of Kate's complicity and death, then of Emily's necessary lies. Now of Cole's absence, even though that absence hadn't been choice. Ryan got to decide whether reuniting with biological father would heal or harm. Got to decide whether genetics mattered, or if 24 years of lies had poisoned any chance of relationship. Other families started going public with their stories. Some reunions were joyful. Parents and children separated for decades finding each other, embracing, crying, starting the difficult work of rebuilding what had been stolen. Those stories made news, feel-good segments on morning shows, proof that justice and healing were possible. But other reunions failed. Children who considered their adoptive families their real families, who rejected biological parents as strangers, who had built lives on the foundation Victor and his co-conspirators had created and didn't want that foundation examined too closely. Those stories got less coverage, but it hurt more to read. Proof that some thefts were permanent, that some damage couldn't be undone, even with truth and good intentions. Cole didn't know which category Ryan would choose. Didn't know if his son saw him as salvation or just another complication in a life already too complicated. Didn't know anything except that waiting was agony and there was no alternative except wait. Week 3 brought unexpected visitor. Emily appeared at Cole's apartment door on a Tuesday evening. She looked smaller than she had in Victor's living room, worn down by testimony and media attention and the collapse of her marriage. But she stood straight, met Cole's eyes, held envelope. "He asked me to give this to you," Wrote it 2 weeks ago. I'm respecting his wishes even though he's not speaking to me either. Cole took the envelope, Ryan's handwriting on the outside. For Cole Mackenzie. Not for dad, not for father. Just the name. Neutral. Keeping distance even in address. How is he? Emily's professional mask slipped. Showed the pain underneath. He's processing. Rented apartment across town. Goes to work. Goes to the range. Runs every morning. Looks like he's functioning, but I know him well enough to see he's barely holding together. Lost his adoptive father to cancer and federal prosecution. Lost me to lies even though I never stopped loving him. Now he's trying to decide if he can trust his biological father or if that's just another betrayal waiting to happen. Tell him I'm here. Tell him I'll wait as long as it takes. Tell him the choice is his and I'll respect whatever he decides. Emily nodded, turned to leave, stopped. For what it's worth, I think he wants to know you. Wants to believe you're the hero Thomas says you are, instead of the monster Victor claimed. He's just scared. Spent his whole life being lied to by people who claim to love him. Hard to trust anyone after that. Even people who might actually deserve it. She left. Cole stood in the doorway holding the envelope. Ryan's first communication in 3 weeks. Words on paper instead of face-to-face conversation, but at least it was something. At least Ryan hadn't completely shut him out. Cole sat at the cheap dining table, opened the envelope carefully, found 3 handwritten pages. Ryan's precise engineering script. Every letter formed with the same discipline he applied to shooting and running and everything else. Cole read, Cole Mackenzie, I'm writing this instead of calling because I need to organize my thoughts before I talk to you. Need to process 24 years of lies and 6 weeks of truth and figure out who I am when everything I believed about myself was fiction. Victor told me you were a dangerous combat veteran who abandoned me. Told me you died in combat shortly after I was born. Told me I was better off without you. I believed that for 2 decades. Built my identity around being Ryan Harper, son of Victor Sterling, orphan whose biological parents were too damaged or dead to raise him. Then I found your dog tags in Victor's attic. Found your name. Started researching. Started learning that everything Victor told me was lie. That you weren't dead, weren't dangerous, weren't the monster he painted you as. You were a Marine who served with honor, who made impossible shots and brought your team home, who took early retirement to search for the son who'd been stolen from you. I spent 6 months building profile of you from service records and interviews with people who knew you. Davis Coleman, Leon Torres, your father Thomas. Even found people who served with Prophet Cross who told me stories about his teachings. About hardest shots being the ones you don't take. About knowing when to spare targets. About warrior code that separated you from killers. I wanted to believe those stories. Wanted to think my biological father was someone worth knowing. But Victor had spent 20 years telling me different story. Telling me that combat veterans were damaged. That PTSD made men dangerous. That you would have hurt me if Kate hadn't saved me by helping Victor adopt me. Then I learned Kate didn't save me. She helped steal me. Then tried to return me, then died because Victor murdered her to keep me. Every layer of truth just revealed another layer of lies. Everyone I trusted had betrayed me. Victor, Kate, Emily, even you in a way, because you watched me for 3 months without telling me who you were. I know you had reasons. Know you wanted to see what kind of man I became. Know you were protecting me from truth until you were sure I could handle it. But it still felt like surveillance. Like being observed instead of known. Like everyone in my life treats me as project or case file instead of person. That's why I need time, need space, need to figure out if I can trust you or anyone. Need to know if blood actually matters or if genetics is just biology without meaning. Need to decide if being your son is gift or burden. Don't contact me. Don't try to speed this up. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Could be weeks, could be months, could be never. But the choice needs to be mine. I've had enough of other people making choices about my life. Ryan. Cole read the letter 3 times, felt the pain and anger and confusion bleeding through every word. Ryan wasn't rejecting him, but he wasn't accepting him either. Just asking for time, for agency, for the right to choose his own path instead of having it chosen by everyone else. Fair, more than fair. Cole folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, set it on the table where he could see it. Proof that Ryan was thinking about him even if Ryan wasn't ready to talk to him. Proof that the possibility of relationships still existed, even if it was fragile and uncertain. Week 4 brought news that the first trial was starting. One of the lawyers who'd worked with Victor, charged with conspiracy, fraud, kidnapping, the prosecution would use Victor's testimony recorded before his death, would call Emily Torres as witness, would bring in families whose lives had been destroyed, would spend months dismantling the conspiracy that Operation Guardian Shield had been. Cole didn't attend, couldn't bear to sit in courtroom watching lawyers argue about his stolen son, like Ryan was evidence instead of person. Couldn't face seeing Emily on witness stand explaining how she'd married into the case while secretly informing to FBI. Couldn't trust himself not to say something that would hurt the prosecution or help the defendants. Instead, he maintained routine. Morning run at 05:30, same time Ryan ran, different route but same discipline. Gym work at 0700, breakfast at 0800. Then hours of nothing, reading, watching news, staying ready for call that might never come. Lunch, more to nothing. Dinner, sleep, repeat. The monotony was familiar, reminded him of deployments, long stretches of boredom punctuated by moments of action. Except in Helmand Province, the action was combat. Here the action would be his son deciding to talk to him. Different kind of battle, different kind of waiting. Thomas called on day 30, week 5 of silence. His breathing was worse, the emphysema accelerating. Doctors had given him months at most, but his voice was strong, determined. The voice of a man who had survived war and would survive long enough to see his grandson choose his father. Ryan called me yesterday, talked for 2 hours, asked about you, about me, about what it means to be Blackwood, what it means to be Mackenzie, what it means to carry warrior blood. What did you tell him? Told him the truth, that Blackwood men and Mackenzie men are the same. Stubborn, loyal. We don't quit. We serve. We protect. We make the hard choices because someone has to. Told him his grandmother Sarah was the glue that held everything together before cancer took her. Told him you've been trying to be the man she would have wanted you to be even when it was hard, even when it hurt. Did he believe you? Don't know. Kid's smart, asks good questions, doesn't accept easy answers. He wanted to know if warrior blood meant violence was inevitable, if genetics determined destiny, if being your son meant he'd end up damaged like he'd been told all his life. What did you say? Told him I served in wars before his time, came back different, raised you alone and made mistakes because I was too broken to be the father you needed. But you didn't repeat my mistakes. You became better man than I was. Better Marine, better father even though you didn't get the chance to prove it for 20 years. Told him bloodline isn't destiny, it's potential. What you do with it determines who you become. Cole felt his throat tighten, his father defending him again, building bridges across 3 generations. Doing the work Cole couldn't do himself because Ryan wasn't ready to hear it from him yet. He's going to contact you, Thomas said. Don't know when, but he's working toward it. Processing, healing, figuring out who he is when all the lies are stripped away him. Be patient, be ready, and when he calls, don't try to be perfect. Just be honest. That's what he needs. Truth even when it's ugly. The call ended. Cole sat in silence, letting his father's words settle. Ryan was talking to Thomas, was asking questions, was working toward decision. Not ready yet, but moving in that direction. Progress, even if it was slow. Day 41 brought the call. Early morning, Cole's phone ringing with unknown number. He answered before first ring finished. This is Ryan, can we meet? 4 words that rewired Cole's entire world. His son, reaching out, asking to meet. 6 weeks of silence ending with simple question that held infinite complexity. Yes, when, where? There's a coffee shop on Main Street. Tomorrow, 0800, come alone. I'll be there. The line went dead. Ryan gone before Cole could say more. Before he could ask how Ryan was, or thank him for calling, or say any of the 1,000 things he'd rehearsed during 6 weeks of waiting. Just logistics, time and place. Clinical, controlled. Ryan managing the reunion on his terms. Fair, more than fair. Cole didn't sleep, spent the night running through scenarios. What to say, what not to say, how to be honest without overwhelming, how to be present without pressuring, how to be father to a son who'd spent 24 years without him and 6 weeks deciding whether to give him a chance. The coffee shop was local place, not a chain, old building converted to hipster cafe with exposed brick and reclaimed wood. The kind of place young professionals went for a pour-over coffee and avocado toast. Cole arrived at 07:45. Early. Tactical habit. Assess the terrain before engagement. Ryan was already there, sitting at corner table with sight lines to the door. His own tactical instinct. Genetics expressing through behavior. He had coffee in front of him. Black. Same way Cole drank it. Another genetic echo. Cole ordered coffee. Sat across from Ryan. Father and son separated by small table and 24 years of absence. Neither spoke immediately, just looked at each other, seeing past genetics to the people underneath. Ryan looked tired, shadows under eyes that spoke to weeks of poor sleep. But he was clean-shaven, dressed professionally, holding himself together through discipline, same way Marines did when everything else was chaos. "Thank you for coming," Ryan said finally. "Thank you for calling." Silence again. Both of them feeling the weight of moment, the significance of first real conversation as father and son instead of strangers colliding in Victor's living room. "I talked to Grandpa Thomas," Ryan continued, "multiple times over the past 6 weeks. He told me about Grandma Sarah, about raising you alone, about the mistakes he made because he was too damaged from war to be the father you needed. He said you broke that cycle, became better than he was. I tried. He also said you spent 20 years searching for me. Every dollar, every resource, every moment you weren't actively deployed or training. He said losing me almost killed you, that you nearly ate your pistol in Oregon when a lead went cold, that Davis and Leon saved you by refusing to let you give up." That's accurate. Ryan absorbed this, processing, computing, running calculations about whether to believe stories or dismiss them as manipulation. "Why?" Ryan asked. "Why search for 20 years? You could have moved on, had other kids, built different life. Why chase someone you'd lost and probably wouldn't find?" "Because you're my son. Because I made you a promise before you could remember making promises. Told you I'd always come home. Told you I'd always protect you. Victor stealing you didn't change that, just made it harder to keep. But you watched me for 3 months before telling me who you were. That's not keeping a promise. That's surveillance." The accusation was fair. Cole had known it would come eventually, had prepared for it, but preparation didn't make the answer easier. "You're right, I watched you, learned your patterns, saw what kind of man you became without me. I told myself it was tactical, reconnaissance before engagement, making sure you were worth disrupting your life for. But truth is, I was scared. Scared of what? Scared you'd reject me. Scared you'd see me as monster Victor described instead of the father I tried to be. Scared that 20 years of absence had poisoned any chance of relationship. Scared that finding you after all that time would hurt you worse than staying away. So I watched. I waited. I tried to convince myself I was being tactical when really I was being a coward." Ryan's expression shifted, some of the hardness softening. Not forgiveness, but at least understanding. "Grandpa Thomas said the hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Said Prophet Cross taught you that. Said you proved it by not killing Victor when you had every reason and opportunity. I wanted to kill him. Every day for 20 years, planned it, prepared for it. But when the moment came, when I had him in my sights, I realized killing him would make me the monster he'd claimed I was. Would teach you that violence solves problems. Would waste your Aunt Kate's sacrifice. So I chose not to shoot. Because of me. Because of lots of reasons. You, the 33 other families. Prophet's memory. My own soul. But yeah, mostly because of you. Wanted you to see that being warrior doesn't mean being killer. That having the skill and justification to take a life doesn't mean you should. That mercy is sometimes stronger than revenge." Ryan nodded, sipped his coffee, thinking. Cole waited, let the silence stretch. Didn't try to fill it with justification or explanation. Just gave his son space to process. "I enlisted," Ryan said finally. "Marine Corps, shipped to boot camp in 2 weeks. Paris Island, 13 weeks to earn the title. Then I'm trying for Scout Sniper School, following your path." The revelation hit Cole like incoming fire. His son, enlisting, choosing to serve, choosing to become what Victor had spent 20 years trying to prevent him from being. "Why?" "Because I need to know who I am when I'm not Ryan Harper living a lie. Need to know if I have what it takes to be Ryan Mackenzie living a truth. Need to test myself against something real. Something that doesn't care about my trauma or my stolen childhood or my famous father. Something that just measures whether I'm good enough to earn the title. You don't have anything to prove, not to me, not to anyone. I'm not proving anything to you. I'm proving something to myself. Spent 24 years being told I couldn't handle military life, that I'd be damaged by it, that warrior blood was curse instead of blessing. I'm going to find out for myself whether that's true. When do you ship? 2 weeks, 14 days. Then I'm gone for 3 months. No contact during training. Marine Corps owns me completely. When I graduate, if I graduate, I'll be different, changed, forged into something new. Then I'll decide if there's room in my life for biological father who missed 20 years but is trying to make up for it. Fair, more than fair. Ryan finished his coffee, stood, extended his hand, formal, professional, keeping distance even while acknowledging connection. Cole stood, shook his son's hand, felt the strength there, the discipline, the potential. Semper Fidelis, Ryan said. Always faithful. I looked up what it means. Not just faithful to the Corps, faithful to brothers, faithful to mission, faithful to family even when family fails you. I'm going to earn that title. Then I'm going to decide what family means. He left, walked out of the coffee shop into Texas morning. Cole watched him go, felt pride and grief and hope tangled together so tightly he couldn't separate them. His son was enlisting, was choosing to serve, was becoming Marine despite everything Victor had done to prevent it. Genetics couldn't be erased. Bloodline couldn't be denied. Ryan Mackenzie was coming home to who he'd always been meant to be. The next 2 weeks passed in preparation. Cole returned to California, to 29 Palms, to teaching young Marines who didn't know that their instructor's son was about to become one of them. Resumed his duties, lectured on wind reading and breathing control, and the difference between shooting and sniping. But his mind was in South Carolina, at Parris Island, where Ryan would arrive and have his civilian identity stripped away, where he would be broken down and rebuilt, where he would earn or fail to earn the title of United States Marine. Davis and Leon knew, didn't say anything, just covered classes when Cole zoned out thinking about Ryan, just provided support the way brothers did, just reminded him that Prophet had taught patience and now patience would be tested in new way. Thomas called weakly, his breathing worse each time, the emphysema winning, but he stayed alive through sheer stubbornness. Determined to see his grandson graduate, determined to meet the 4th generation of Mackenzie Marines, determined to pass the legacy forward before he died. Week 13 arrived, graduation day, family day at Parris Island. Cole flew to South Carolina, met Davis and Leon who had flown in separately, met Thomas who had been transported from Montana in wheelchair with oxygen tank. 4 generations of military service converging on parade ground where Ryan would either graduate or fail. The ceremony was pure Marine Corps, precision, discipline, pride. Recruits marched in formation, perfect synchronization. 3 months of training evident in every movement. Cole watched for Ryan, found him in 3rd Platoon, standing tall, lean, changed from the young man who'd walked out of that coffee shop 13 weeks ago. The commandant spoke about honor and courage and commitment, about the legacy recruits were joining, about the warriors who came before and the responsibility to those who would come after. Standard speech, but it hit different when your son was graduating, when your bloodline was continuing, when everything you'd lost 20 years ago was being rebuilt in new form. Individual presentations, each recruit receiving Eagle Globe and anchor from family member, symbol of joining the brotherhood, of earning the title, of becoming something larger than themselves. Private First Class Ryan Mackenzie. Cole's son marched forward, found Cole in the crowd, their eyes met. Ryan's expression was neutral, professional, but something passed between them. Acknowledgement, recognition, acceptance. Cole walked onto the parade ground, in dress blues, all his ribbons and decorations, scout sniper badge, evidence of 24 years service, proof that the title his son was earning meant something. He stood before Ryan, father and son, both Marines now, both warriors, 20 years apart compressed into this moment. By this emblem, Cole said, pinning Eagle Globe and anchor to Ryan's collar, you are now and forever a Marine. Welcome home, son. Ryan saluted. Cole returned it, then broke protocol and pulled his son into embrace. First time in 20 years. First hug since Ryan was 4 years old. Father and son reunited through service and blood and choice. The crowd applauded, but Cole barely heard it. Just felt Ryan's arms around him, felt his son accepting him, felt 20 years of searching finally ending in something that looked like family. They separated. Ryan returned to formation. Cole walked back to where Thomas waited in wheelchair. His father was crying. First time Cole had ever seen it. Thomas Blackwood, gunnery sergeant, 82 years old. Veteran of wars most people had forgotten. Crying because his grandson had earned the title his son had earned that his father had earned. 4 generations. Unbroken line. After ceremony, 4 generations stood together. Thomas in wheelchair with oxygen, Cole at 48, Ryan at 24, taking pictures, sharing stories, building connections that Victor Sterling had tried to destroy but couldn't. Genetics were stronger than lies. Blood was thicker than conspiracy. Thomas pulled Ryan close, spoke quiet enough that only Cole could hear. Your grandmother Sarah would be proud. Wish she could see this. 4 generations of service. The line continues. Make it count, boy. Honor the ones who came before. Teach the ones who come after. Ryan nodded, serious, understanding the weight of what he was receiving, the legacy, the responsibility, the expectation. Thomas turned to Cole. Goodbye, son. Did good. Raised a warrior even when you couldn't be there to raise him. Prophet would be proud. I'm proud. You're not saying goodbye. You'll be here when Ryan graduates Scout Sniper School. Thomas smiled, sad, knowing maybe not. But I've seen what I needed to see. 4th generation earning the title. The line secure. That's enough. 4 weeks later, Thomas Blackwood died. Emphysema finally winning the battle he'd fought for decades. He died in the veterans' home in Montana with Cole at his bedside and Ryan flying in on emergency leave to say goodbye. The funeral was full military honors. Flag-draped casket, rifle salute, taps played while 3 generations of Mackenzies stood at attention. Burial at Montana State Veterans Cemetery beside warriors who had served in conflicts spanning 6 decades. Thomas joined them, another name on another stone, another Marine going home. Ryan took it hard. Grandfather he'd known for months instead of years. Old man who'd bridged gap between past and present. Who'd told truth when everyone else was lying. Who'd validated his choice to serve. Gone before Ryan could thank him properly. Cole put hand on Ryan's shoulder as dirt covered the casket. Said nothing. Just stood with his son while they buried the man who had made both of them possible. The man who had survived war and hardship and grief to pass the legacy forward. Thomas Blackwood, gunnery sergeant, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, Marine. The old man had served in conflicts before Cole was born, had seen combat in places whose names were classified even now, had come home carrying wounds visible and invisible, had raised Cole alone after Sarah died, had made mistakes because war had damaged him in ways he couldn't articulate. But he'd survived, had passed the warrior tradition forward, had lived long enough to see his great-grandson earn the title. That was enough. 6 months later, Ryan graduated Scout Sniper School, top of his class, natural talent meeting intensive training. Genetics validated. Cole pinned the Scout Sniper badge on his son's uniform. Same badge Thomas had given Ryan months before. Same badge Cole had earned 26 years earlier. 3 generations. Same school, same skills, same legacy. They stood together after graduation. Father and son, both snipers now, both warriors, 20 years apart ending in complete reunion. I start my first deployment in 3 months, Ryan said. Afghanistan, same province you served in, Helmand. Cole nodded, felt the weight of that. His son going to same war he'd fought. Different era, different enemy, same danger. Remember what Prophet had taught. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Confirmed kills don't measure your worth. Coming home does. I'll remember. And Ryan, Cole added, voice quiet but firm, don't let the hunt consume you the way it consumed me. Don't spend 20 years searching for something stolen. Live your life, build your family, be present for them. Speaking from experience? Hard-won experience. Cole gestured to the ranges where young Marines trained. This is good work, teaching the next generation, passing forward what you learn. But it's not everything. Don't sacrifice family for mission. Don't let service become excuse for absence. Ryan absorbed this, nodded, understanding in a way he couldn't have before becoming Marine himself. Emily reached out, Ryan said. Wants to talk. Wants to explain why she did what she did. Wants to know if there's chance for us. What are you going to do? Don't know yet. Still processing. Still figuring out if I can trust someone who lied that thoroughly, even if the lies were for good reason. But I'm thinking about it. That's progress. It is. What about you, Ryan asked. You going to stay in California teaching, or are you finally going to build something permanent? This is permanent enough. Cole looked at the ranges, the young Marines, the legacy he was passing forward, teaching young warriors to be better than he'd been, to learn from his mistakes, to understand that being sniper was about discipline and patience and knowing when not to shoot. Besides, Cole added, I've got reason to stay now. Can't teach my son proper fieldcraft if I'm not around to correct his mistakes. Ryan smiled. First genuine smile Cole had seen. Not the professional mask, not the guarded expression, real joy. Fair, more than fair. 5 years passed. Ryan deployed twice. Afghanistan, then Syria. 247 confirmed kills. Getting close to Cole's numbers. Following the path his genetics had laid out. Coming home each time a little different, a little harder, but also a little wiser. Cole kept teaching, kept passing Prophet's wisdom forward. Hardest shots are the ones you don't take. Warrior chooses when to kill and when to spare. Confirmed kills don't define you. Character does. Ryan and Emily reconciled, slowly, carefully, building trust from ruins. They remarried on a beach in California with Cole and Davis and Leon as witnesses. Small ceremony, private, just family and brothers. Starting again with foundation of truth instead of lies. Year 6 brought grandson, James Prophet Mackenzie, 7 pounds 8 ounces. Healthy, strong, 5th generation of warriors, though he wouldn't know it for years. Cole held him in the hospital and felt the weight of legacy, felt the responsibility, felt the hope that this child would grow up knowing his father instead of searching for him. Ryan stood beside Cole looking at his son, 4th generation looking at 5th, the line continuing. You gonna tell him stories about great-grandfather Thomas and Prophet Cross? Every one I can remember, Cole promised. Going to tell him about choosing when not to shoot, about mercy being stronger than revenge, about family mattering more than confirmed kills. Going to make sure he knows where he comes from. And if he wants to serve, then we teach him right. Teach him what Thomas taught me, what I taught you, what Prophet taught. It's all of us. That being warrior is about more than shooting. It's about choosing, about knowing when to act and when to wait, about making hard choices because someone has to. Ryan nodded, held his son close, understanding now what Cole had lost, understanding why the 20-year search had consumed him, understanding that being father was harder than any deployment. Thank you, Ryan said quietly, for not giving up, for searching 20 years, for choosing not to kill Victor when you had every right, for showing me what warrior actually means. You earned that understanding yourself. I just gave you the genetics. You did the work. We did it together, even when we didn't know we were doing it together. Cole left the hospital that night feeling something he hadn't felt in decades. Complete. The hunt that had consumed 20 years was over. The son who'd been stolen was found. The legacy was secure. 4 generations of service with 5th generation sleeping in nursery, not knowing yet that he carried warrior blood. Driving back to 29 Palms, Cole thought about Prophet, about lessons learned in Helmand Province, about choosing when not to shoot, about letting the Taliban commander live because killing him would create more enemies than it eliminated, about choosing not to kill Victor Sterling, even though every instinct demanded it, about letting cancer and federal prosecution handle justice because revenge would have taught Ryan the wrong lesson. The hardest shots were the ones you didn't take. Prophet had been right. 20 years of searching, 20 years of wanting revenge, 20 years of planning perfect kill shot. And in the moment when it mattered, when his son was watching, Cole had chosen mercy over murder, had chosen family over vengeance, had chosen to be warrior instead of killer. That choice had cost him 6 weeks of silence, 6 weeks of uncertainty, 6 weeks of not knowing if his son would accept him or reject him. But that choice had also earned him reunion, had earned him trust, had earned him grandson named after the man who taught him the hardest lesson. Cole pulled into base at 29 Palms, reported to duty next morning, taught young Marines about wind reading and breathing control, about patience and discipline, about knowing when to shoot, and more importantly, when not to shoot. And sometimes when the day was long and the training hard, Cole would think about Ryan deployed somewhere overseas, would think about grandson James Prophet growing up knowing his father, would think about Thomas and Sarah and Kate and Prophet, all the people who'd shaped the legacy that was passing forward. Would think about Victor Sterling dying alone in federal custody, about Emily serving her duty and losing her marriage, then earning it back through honesty, about Davis and Leon still covering his back after 26 years, about brotherhood that outlasted deployments and distance in time. Would think about the day he'd stood on a doorstep in Dallas with rifle scope trained on the man who'd stolen his son, with every justification to pull trigger, with 20 years of rage demanding satisfaction, and how he'd chosen not to shoot. Hardest shot he ever didn't take. Best decision he ever made. The old breed teaching the new breed. The warriors who remembered when technology failed and all you had was training and instinct and the wisdom to know that sometimes the greatest victory came not from pulling the trigger, but from having the discipline to lower the rifle. Cole Mackenzie, 48 years old when the hunt ended, 54 years old holding his grandson. Master Sergeant USMC retired, 2,956 confirmed kills. And one perfect shot he chose not to take. The shot that saved his family. The shot that proved Prophet right. The shot that taught his son what warrior actually meant. Semper Fidelis. Always faithful. To the core. To brothers. To family. To the hard choices that define character more than confirmed kills ever could. The old breed lives on. Through teaching. Through legacy. Through sons who become fathers who teach sons. Through the wisdom passed down across generations that some battles are won by fighting and others are won by choosing not to fight. Cole had followed his war, had hunted his target for 20 years, and when the moment came to end it, had chosen family over revenge. Ryan would fight his wars, would hunt his targets, would make his own choices about when to shoot and when to spare. And someday James Prophet Mackenzie would face his own decisions, would carry the legacy forward, would learn from great-grandfather and grandfather and father that being warrior meant more than body count. The line continued, the legacy secured, the old breed teaching the new breed, forever faithful, forever Marine, forever choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. The story ended where it began, on a firing range, teaching young warriors, passing wisdom forward. But now Cole Mackenzie had family waiting when he went home, had son who called him dad, had grandson who would grow up knowing his grandfather. The 20-year hunt was over. The family was whole. The hardest shot had been worth not taking, and that was enough. Brothers and sisters, this story cuts deep, doesn't it? Cole Mackenzie spent 20 years hunting the man who stole his son, had the perfect shot, every justification to pull that trigger. But he chose mercy over revenge. Prophet Cross was right. The hardest shots are the ones you don't take. That's what separates warriors from killers. Now I want to hear from you veterans out there. Have you ever faced a moment where choosing not to act took more courage than acting? Drop your thoughts below. And if this story resonated with your own experiences of sacrifice and brotherhood, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories honoring the old breed who understood that sometimes the greatest victory comes from the discipline to lower your weapon. Semper Fi, and I'll see you in the next one.